Okay, welcome back to another great episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Of course, I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the city of angels. Or is it? How about demons? Or ghosts? Or dead? Whatever the hell you want to call it, I'll take it. Now, we do have two guests today, so we'll try to get as much as possible in. The second guest, you all know, he's been on here multiple times, Grant Cameron. We're going to be talking about UFOs in music. But this hour, we're going to be talking about leadership, um, military, so many more topics other than that. I'm going to let the guest herself describe that. So, without further ado, let me introduce Senior Chief Petty Officer Courtney Kittrell. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. J. I'm happy to be here.
Now, let's talk about your book and what got you to get there first, and then we can go back into your military career.
Okay. So my book actually came out of nowhere. Never in a million years did I ever think I would write a book. If you would have told me last year that I would have a book out this year, I would have said you're fucking crazy. That's not going to happen.
Hmm.
But here I stand, and I will not complain about it because it has been a joyous time of my life right now. So I made a Facebook post last year around Veterans Day, this same time frame last year, just explaining to people that, even though you see a lot of the good times on the social media websites with us taking pictures and getting drunk and visiting countries and promotions and celebrations, retirement, behind the uniform, we are stressed and we are tired. And it's different things that we go through, but because we're in the military and people look up to us, we try to put on a front, a facade, like everything is okay when it's not. And that's what ends up leading to the mass suicides that we're having,
Ooh.
the PTSDs that we're having that, I think that should be treated a little bit better than what it is. That's a whole other topic. But it leads to a lot of things that people don't really think about until you get close to retirement and you look back and you say, you know what, I never dealt with a situation from 10 years ago. And now I'm thinking about it and all my emotions are flooding to me now. So I made a raw Facebook post and I got so many compliments and just the outpouring of support about, just the comments about how people thought it was just them. They didn't know that they were not the only ones. They were stressed out as well. They were so glad I said that. And then somebody said, you need to write a book. And I was like, no. But then I said, okay. Somebody else told me the same thing. So I said, you know what? If I have more than one person that's telling me the same bit of information, let me get off my ass and go write a book about something. So my first initial thought process was to get short stories from service members, their struggle and how they overcame, talk to the spouses and get their stories. Because when service members go out on deployments and fighting wars and on overseas, the spouses are at home trying to maintain the homes. And I think wives and the husbands don't get enough credit when they're at home taking care of the home front, maintaining a job, maintaining the bills, and taking care of the kids, and just trying to do
Mm.
everything from a two-parent house down to a one-parent household with 1, 2, 4, or either 10 kids, and they don't get enough credit for that. So I wanted them to share their raw story to help somebody else out get through it, because they might be feeling the same way and not know it because nobody wants to speak on the truth, the real, the rawness. So everybody said, hey, sis, I got you. I'll give you a story. Dr. J, it's been a whole year, and I'm still waiting on those stories from my friends. So I said, you know what? I'm not waiting anymore. I'm going to go write this story about my life, my success, my failure, my confusion, my sexual identity, all that good stuff, because if I can just help one person and they can look at me and say, I really appreciate it because your story spoke volumes, and I feel like now I do have a purpose. I just have to figure out what my purpose is so I can walk in it. If I have done my job, or just one person telling me that, then I'm good to go with that. And that's all I needed through this book. So,
Now, I'm assuming you just finished a year ago?
so the book
Retired?
was actually, oh, no, I'm still in. I am
Oh,
still active
oh,
duty.
okay, great. I didn't
I
know
am.
that.
Yes.
Career, literally career,
Cor-
20 years going.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes.
you've been to so many countries. Um, I, you list them. How about that?
So I have been all over the place, and it has been a wonderful experience. You never realize, what you have at home until you go over to another country that is not as well off as we are here, and we take it for granted. I have been to Italy, Spain, Croatia, uh, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Haifa. Oh my goodness, Antalya, Turkey. I've been to London. I've been to Portugal. Been to Lisbon. Oh my goodness, Puerto Rico. You name it. Dubai, Bahrain. I have been to Tel Aviv. I've been from everywhere.
Tel Aviv,
So,
Israel, and Dubai. Yeah, I read that too about that. And
yes,
when you said you talked about your successes and failures, I think it's important to have failures because from that, we rise up in our ashes to become better.
correct. Yes, I'm a firm believer in that, and I tell people, it's only a failure if you fall and you refuse to stand back up. If you fell in something and you do stand back up, you're able to stand back and plant your feet solidly on the ground and say, you know what, it was just a one time thing. It's not a failure, it was a lesson learned. So you know what not to do the next time. But it's only a failure if you fall down and you never pick yourself back up. You just lay in it and take it. You can't do that. Not if you want to get ahead in life. You cannot do that.
That's right. That's right. Very true. Now, some of your deployments on some of the ships, what kind of ships? Destroyers, aircraft carriers, I'm assuming, right?
Aircraft, all aircraft carriers. I was on the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, the John F. Kennedy, the USS Enterprise was just decommed in 2013, and then the USS George H. Bush. I was on. My last deployment was in 2017.
All presidential names, almost all presidential names, literally.
Oh yes, sir. Yes, yes.
I know I've heard this from military people in the past that if we didn't have aircraft carriers, we could not literally win battles in today's wars. What do you say about that?
It's an all hands effort. Every piece of the military, all of us in a battle group that go out, we all play an integral part. We all have each other's back. So I don't think it would be if we didn't have an aircraft carrier, we wouldn't win. We have other
Assets.
out there in the ocean with us. So it's an all hands effort. I think it does. I don't think anyone. I don't want to put any weight on one more than the other. It is an all hands effort when we go out there and we, protect the country. Because without one of us, anything out there could fail or blow up or get lost or sink, whatever. It's an all hands effort, though. We all have each other's back if somebody's in trouble. We come full force, one
And
big old family.
yeah, you always come in fleets.
Yes,
Literally. Yeah, that's the
yes.
greatest part. You're
A
always
lot of people don't
working with
realize
each
that.
other.
Mm-hmm. And we tell people that, we all contribute to something. So no matter if it's if a small boy is not out there, we're going to feel the effects because it's something that they have that we need. If we're not out there, then the small boys will feel the effects because it's something that, the carriers have that they need, the subs as well. So we all play an integral part in making sure we're protecting, our waterways, our seaways, trading, everything. So we all play an integral part into that.
Here's a question for you from Lasha Senyuk. How do people in other countries respond to American troops? Has it changed in recent years? And
It's always.
thank you
Oh, go
for your
ahead. Sorry.
service too.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure on some days. That's my favorite phrase because some days I'm ready to retire more than others. Today was a good day, though. But when we go up to other countries, it really depends on the climate of America at the time. I remember my first deployment, we pulled into Greece, where was it? I can't remember. We pulled into Greece, though. And I remember we had a brief because they were telling us that while we were in that country, that there were going to be some protesting going on because they were not receptive of Americans coming in, to stay clear, make sure we had battle buddies, and you were always you have the Liberty buddy just to make sure that you're protected as more than one person in a group, and if anything happens, we are alerted to come back to the ship. So that actually happened because they were protesting and there were flyers flying all over the place. They had a ship with a big old red circle and an X cross through it because they did not want us there. So that port got shut down real quick. Recently, 2017, with all the places that we went, we really didn't have any issues. It only becomes an issue when, in my opinion, this is coming from, Courtney Kittrell, you have the younger kids who are just now coming in. They're just now getting their own pot of money.
Mm-hmm.
They're going and
17,
experiencing
18,
life.
right?
Yes. 21, never had a drink before. They're in a whole nother country. they have not figured themselves out. So they go to these countries, and now, for lack of better terms, they're wilding out. They're, getting drunk, and they're being belligerent, and they're not understanding the rules and regulations of the country that we're in. That's when we end up getting a red eye, because you have kids that are brand new to this world, and we're trying to teach them. But a lot of the times, the lessons learned are when you fail. and they fall, and they learn a lesson. Oh, you know what? Let me act right the next time I go to another country, because last time I was in whatever country, I got in trouble and things didn't go well. And yes, so it just depends on the climate of America at the time, and a lot of the times when we have crazy things happen, it's usually because the younger people have never been exposed to anything, and you're trying to keep them in line, and it's hard to do when everybody's grown with their own money, just doing their own thing. So, but for the most part, it's pretty cool.
I'm assuming with all the years you've had in your service, you've seen some of your friends and in the military that were killed in action, right?
I've seen more suicides than I like to. That's the number one thing that bothers me. And just in like into September, it's about the middle of October, I want to say. I recently just had 3 chiefs that I've known actually commit suicide within like weeks apart of each other, and I've worked with all 3 of them, and that's the part that kind of grabs me. That it hugs at my heartstrings, because people that come to the military. In my mind, I feel like we all escape. We're coming to the military to escape something from our past, but we never really escape that. We're bringing that baggage with us. But it's like we're trying to join the military to go do something bigger and better, to be a part of something bigger than life, and, feel like we're belonging to an organization, to feel like we're needed to do something. But you still have this baggage that you haven't dealt with from a past life. So we bring that with us, and then you have the baggage from your past life, the new stresses of a whole new world when you come into the military, the stresses of trying to learn your job, the stresses of trying to advance, the stresses of being a supervisor or a leader, trying to lead other people. And on top of that, dealing with your home life, if you're married, if you have kids, if you're divorced, if you're going through a divorce, and we keep everything bottled up in this bag full of all this stuff. And after a while, your bag is going to get heavy. And instead of us raising our hands saying, hey, I need to take a knee, I need time out, I need to go talk to someone, we try to maintain as if life is good, because we don't want to share with anybody, my life is in shambles, I can't figure this out. Oh my God, how can I be so stupid to marry this person, and now they don't want me anymore, or they're cheating on me, or whatever the case may be. We don't say anything because of shame, being judged, being, demoted from our job position, because now maybe your chain of command doesn't have any confidence that you can complete your job. It's just so many factors that deal into that. So we figure the only way to get rid of this pain is to just take ourselves out. And it's sad. It is a sad, sad situation. So that is what that's the number one thing that's happening right now in the military.
That breaks my heart, and it's really sad to know, because you explained it perfectly. You can't raise your freaking hand up. What are you going to say? Especially
Exactly.
if you have people underneath you that look
and
up
I
to
tell
you.
people, exactly. And so with that mindset, because you have people under you that look up to you, you don't say anything because you don't want to look weak, because you can't be a weak leader. Who's going to follow a weak leader? You know what I'm saying? So
Nobody.
now, exactly. So you say, you know what? I'm going to hold this in. I got it. I can do it. But some people's demons are a lot stronger than other people's demons. I was that person at one time a couple of years ago when I thought I wanted to kill myself. I didn't want to be here. I felt like I didn't have a purpose. But luckily, I had a village around me that kind of, okay, you know what? You just snap out of this. Let's go out. Let's go get some air. Let's go shopping. Let's go get some food. Let's have some drinks, whatever. And I ended up having, I call my sister friend who just whipped my ass. Hey, pull your head out your ass and let's go. We don't have time for this right now. Stop sulking. Get up. You got better days ahead of you. And I thank her for it, because she, if it wasn't for that push, that one person that could actually say, you know what, come on, let's go, I don't know if I'd be here right now. I don't know if I would have found my wife. I don't know, if all this success that I'm having now would have ever happened, because I was so depressed in a dark space. And what was keeping me alive really was going to work every day. That's what was keeping me alive, because I wasn't at home by myself thinking about my depression, my sadness, why me, what's my purpose, why am I here, I can't do this, I'm tired, my heart hurts, my mind is racing. the silence was loud. But when I went to work, I was fine. I was around people. My mind wasn't on anything but just work, having fun, training, my sailors, and that was it. So work was really keeping me alive.
Is your wife also in the military?
She is. She is a senior chief as well.
Oh, wow. Now, let me
Yes.
ask you this. That's enlisted what? E7? E8?
E8.
E8,
E8.
yeah. That's a
Yeah.
high pay.
Oh yeah.
Now, you're in it for admiral, right?
Oh no, 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 no. It sounds good though. I'll take the admiral paycheck, but no, I give myself September 2021. That is what I'm looking to actually go out with a bang and have a retirement. I can still put in 20 years somewhere else after this. So I want to go out, mentor, be a life coach, start motivating and inspiring people to, get past their fears of, not being able to grow into who they are, not knowing their purpose. I just want to go out and motivate people. So that's what I think I'm going to do when I retire.
Well, I agree, and with all the topics like you mentioned, the mental health, LGBTQ, leadership,
Yes.
geez,
Yes.
I mean, we have more personal growth,
Yes.
self-awareness, military, just so many things that you could pass down to the youth, people younger than you that are wanting to enlist, that people that are already in one branch of the military, whether it be Navy, Marines, Army, or whether it be Coast Guard, and Air Force, and they need that mentoring. And it's important for people such as yourself to continue to do that. And I'm glad you wrote this book, and I'm glad I have you here today, actually. Now, here's a question for you in the chat. Let me ask this for you first, and then I wanted to ask what I wanted to ask here. Okay,
Okay.
Nicholas Cashmore is in Canada. He says, do you agree that the USA should be the world's police?
My personal opinion, no. I don't think so because I feel like we can't handle our own affairs in our own country. How can we go
A
to another country and
fucking
handle those
man,
affairs?
right?
So that it drives me crazy. Like my mom said, don't pick weeds out of my garden when you got a whole garden full of weeds yourself. Handle your affairs first. Once you get everything in line, up to and touch, and everything is golden, we don't have homeless people, we don't have kids starving, we don't have, just unnecessary killings for no reason. Then we can go out and help other countries get to where we're at. But we can't help a country if we can't help ourselves. That's how I feel. So that's my
I
personal
definitely
opinion.
agree. I've always argued that we should not be policing the world because we have to police our own country. Not even police it, help it. And
Exactly.
I don't know about you, but I'm in favor of the president in office right now because he's doing a lot for the military, a lot more than
Mhm.
I've seen other presidents do.
Mhm.
And my brother I know is very happy about that because he himself was actually re- came in reserved as a reserve and was activated after 9/11. And now that was my next question to you is what happened because you were in the Navy during 9/11. How did that change your life or the military or the status of what you were doing? What were can you describe the day? Where were you? Um,
I
uh,
sure can.
yeah, yeah,
I
please.
remember it like yesterday. So the morning of 9/11, I was on the USS John F. Kennedy. We just got on the ship. We were getting ready to pull away from the pier down in Mayport, Florida. We were going on, I think it might have been like a month out to sea. We were supposed to stop in two islands down in I think it was like Jamaica somewhere. We're doing like little mini port visits down there, and I was excited. Never been to the islands. So I remember I work nights. So, you come in, you get your bed, your rack, everything set up. You're cleaning out the berthing where you're sleeping, your sleeping quarters and everything, getting your uniforms and stuff together, making sure you're all prepped and ready to go for work because I would be going to work at 7 p.m. that night. I crawled into my rack and I remember all the lights were out in the berthing and I remember all the lights being cut on and people started talking and I was just like, okay, what is going on? And then I think it was our commanding officer of the ship actually came on the 1MC, the internal speaker system in the ship, and he said, if you are in a compartment that has a TV, I need everybody to turn the TV on because America is under attack. And I was like, what? And I'm brand new. I am fresh. I'm probably like 19 years old. I have no clue about this thing. We always say we want to go to the military, and if the number one thing the young people say coming to the military, what was your purpose for coming? And they'll say, oh, I wanted to go to college. We for
The
some reason
GI
forget that.
Bill, right?
Yes. And we forget that we actually go to war. Like, the military is more about college, is less about college and more about war. We forget about that. I was that person. I want to go to college. Not thinking one day, it's going to really, something's really going to pop off and my ass is going to be like in the middle of nowhere trying to figure out, well, I want to go home, whatever. So we get up and we cut the TV on. And I remember seeing, I think it was like the NBC, the Today Show. We're doing the anchors or whatever on there, and behind them was one of the towers. And I remember watching the plane fly into the side of the building, and I'm like, did that just happen?
The first
It was one of
plane or
those like,
the second one? The
I don't
second one was
remember. I don't
live.
remember if it was the first one or the second one. I just remember seeing a plane fly into the side of the building, and it was like, oh my God, what just happened? And and you stop and you stare at it because you're thinking, like, this can't be real. Who's going to attack America? We're a great country. Nobody hates us. I was naive. I didn't know the things I know now. And I think that was like the last thing I remember. Then later on that day, everybody was kind of in shambles. I found out the towers had fallen. We had a lot of people that were from New York. Families, were killed, or sisters, parents, brothers, whatever, were killed in that.
Yeah,
Yes.
cousins,
So we
husbands,
were
wives,
making
like you
phone
said.
calls. Yes. A lot of the sailors from the ship were making phone calls home, trying to check on loved ones who worked in the towers, trying to check on loved ones who worked in the area. And it was just so sad. And later on that day, I remember going down to the chapel, to the church on the ship, because I was just like, you know what? This is like, I need to pray. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, what's going to come out of this. I don't know what direction. I don't even know if I'm going to stay in for another year because I can't do this. This is too much for me. I wasn't ready. I wasn't built for it in my head. That's what I was thinking. So I went down to the chapel, and I remember there was a pastor down there, and it was like it was a lot of people down there. They're praying and crying and all that kind of good stuff. And the story starts to get funny because I'm religious, but I'm not religious. I go to church, but I wasn't like in church. I know little scriptures here and there. So the pastor calls me up to the front, and he has his hand on my forehead, and he's trying to pray over me, and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is kind of weird. What are we doing? Where are we going with this? I just wanted to be alone. I just wanted to be like, Lord, get us home safe and sound. Bless my family. Keep me safe. Amen. That's all I wanted. No, that's not what I got, though. So he pulls me up there. He's trying to pray over me. He takes out a bottle of oil. He's trying to anoint my forehead. And I'm going, oh, my God, man, you're putting all this oil on my forehead. I'm going to break out. This is not cool.
Yeah.
So I have all these thoughts going through my head. So, and then as he's praying, he's pushing my head back. And I'm going, what are you doing? So I'm pushing forward. I'm going, no, you would not like, I don't understand what's happening right now. Why are you pushing my head back? And so I said, oh, this is like one of those churches. I'm supposed to fall out on the floor. And I was like, oh, okay. So I've never done that before. And now I start thinking, okay, if I fall out on this floor, what's going to happen? Am I going to disrespect him, religiously, or am I going to disrespect what I believe in? And I was like, you know what, fuck it. I fell on the floor and just laid there.
Yeah.
I said, eventually somebody's going to tap me, wake me up, and get me out of here. And I will never come back down into this chapel again. I will learn how to pray in my rack. So that's what I did. I kind of woke up and smooth glided out of that chapel so quick, never to return again. So that was my first day of 9/11. And it seems like on a serious note, it seems like after that, a lot of our missions and the things that we do, they have changed. They have heightened. I think that heightened our awareness a little bit more because when things are so calm and it's so cool, we get complacent, we get comfortable. And I think that's what happens. And we get caught off guard because we're so trusting and we're so loving because you don't ever want to really think the worst could happen. You always want to believe that, no, we're good. That's why people leave their doors unlocked. It'll never happen here. That's why you don't lock your car. Nobody will break into my car. You let your kids walk down the street. Nobody's going to kidnap my kids. We get comfortable and we lose the grip. We lose the grip on reality. And that's what we did. So I think when that attack happened, a lot of things, were amped up. A lot of programs, a lot of policies and procedures were revised. Even with, active shooters these days, a lot of things, we're always more reactive than we are proactive. And it sucks, but it's like you don't really think about things until it happens. And in hindsight, it's always 2020.
Of course,
but,
it's always 2020 because it's hindsight. If you know the facts beforehand, then you could prepare. But how can you? how could this be known that this was going to happen on our soil?
Exactly. They brought the attack to us. It was like, really? Oh my goodness, this is crazy. So yeah, a lot of things changed. I think it was probably needed. It was probably necessary. You should, in my opinion, you should go back and look. I think every, obviously, like every 5 to 10 years, things can happen. So I think it's important that we go back and kind of see, where were we 5 to 10 years ago? Do we need to, up the ante? Do we need to revise some things? Are there some things that should be, tightened up, or just a revision every now and then, so that we don't lose reality and we're always reminded of what could be. In case something ever happens, you can say, you know what, I've seen this before, I've seen this action before, or I've seen these clues before. These clues are going to lead to X, Y, and Z because we've been through it already. So I don't know. That's just my
Let,
opinion.
let me ask you, 3 to 6 months after 9/11, what did that look like for you?
Well, I know when we went out there during 9/11, I said we were supposed to be pulling, like, doing like mini port visits to, I think it was St. Croix and St. Thomas we were supposed to be visiting. Well, when the attacks happened, they scratched that. So that changed. And I remember we stayed out to sea for 45, I think it was like 45 days. We stayed out to sea. And when President Bush was down in Florida, some of the jets from our carrier ended up escorting, Air Force One up to New York and D.C. to make sure, we were pretty much protecting our airways at that time and the waterways at that time from, New York all the way down to Florida. We were out there for 45 days and we came back getting geared up to go out on deployment. But I couldn't say our deployment really changed a lot. It didn't. Not that I noticed. We pulled in the port every 2 weeks. It was just frustrating for the people that seemed like they had Muslim last names, because then now you have a whole no-fly list, and everybody was getting hit up with this no-fly list, and you're like, but I had nothing to do with that. It was. I felt bad. Like, it was crazy, because like now you just like have these targeted people that like are on this no-fly list. And I'm going, anybody could have blown up flew a plane into a building, but it is what it was. But I just thought it was kind of crazy. But it is not nothing significant for me that I saw at that time, because I was really young still. That I noticed that changed a lot.
Another question in the chat for you. What would USA look like if 6.4 trillion was spent in US instead of Middle East wars? Great question, actually.
Oh my goodness! I think number one, let's take care of the kids. Let's get the schools funding. Let's start paying the teachers and the emergency service providers and the military members. We're sustainable. But, the people that actually work overtime and have those thankless jobs where they're raising and I always say, like, raising other people's kids. But, teachers, if you have a really good teacher, they are no crap going to go out of their way to make sure they teach and lead and educate the children. Like, they need to be taken care of. Are homeless, whether you're a veteran or not. We should not have any homeless people in America, but we do. We should not have homeless veterans when there's supposed to be so many different resources out there for them to utilize. Why is it not being utilized? And the number one thing they say, is lack of funding, is lack of money. Okay, $6.4 trillion. We should be golden. There should be no excuse why a school can't get school books, or a school has to shut down because of funding, or your kids are being taught in a trailer because the classrooms are too hot, or there's no heat in the classrooms, or whatever the case may be. There shouldn't be any teacher strikes.
Paying out of their own pocket for things
simple
for students.
things.
Yeah.
And sending papers home asking parents to buy 10 boxes of Kleenex and 12 packs of pencils, because they know Jimmy, Timmy, and Sammy, when they go home, they're not going to have anything because the parents can't afford to get X, Y, and Z. It shouldn't be like that. College tuition shouldn't be as high as a giraffe's ass just to go get an education, when they want to push you to get it, but then you can't pay for it. Yeah. And it's like, well, then what do you want me to do?
I'm sort of stuck in that myself, actually. 400,000 I accumulated getting my law degree, and then another degree after that. So, yeah. And I'll be probably close to 60 when it's paid off. Literally.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty sad, but I signed up for it thinking, I was going to get hot shot job with killer pay afterwards. Doesn't work that way. Everyone thinks that way.
Yeah, life had other plans for you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's for sure. Now, let me talk to you. Are you a prisoner in your own world?
I used to be, not anymore. I was so uncomfortable because I didn't know who I was. I was reaching out trying to figure it out. I was, before we had Google and all this stuff, you're like in chat rooms on AOL, like in I think it was like Yahoo Messenger. I think at one point it was like a thing we used to have back in the day. Just trying to just like go in chat rooms, like gay and lesbian chat rooms and all this kind of stuff. I didn't know anybody like me. I didn't know anybody that, was growing up and having the same feelings and, growing up in a house that while we went to church and we believe in heaven and hell and there's a God and there's a devil and everything. And you hear a pastor preaching, you're sinning, you're going to go to hell. You're like, oh my God, but I'm like 7. I don't want to go to hell. I want to be with my mom and my dad. Like, what in the world? Um, you don't know who to talk to, and I didn't want to tell my mom because having kids, your parents always want more for their kids than what they have for themselves. So you don't want to disappoint your parents and be like, well, I think I might be gay. I don't know. So all girls a phase. You don't want to hear that. It's a phase. They're like, no, it's not. But
There's
I was,
two
huh?
questions. I'm glad you mentioned that. And someone
Mm,
actually beat me to this in chat. And so I'll read this to you. Has she had any difficulty being gay in the military? Because you joined in the era of don't ask,
don't
don't
ask,
have to
don't
have.
tell. Yes.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, yes. Only because I'm young, I'm inexperienced with life. I actually got married to a guy trying to live the right life for other people to make other people happy when I wasn't happy. Happy, I was suffering. I couldn't tell anybody what I was going through. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody to guide me. I didn't have, somebody I could trust in an inner circle to say, hey, look, I know I'm married, but I'm having these feelings. I know I'm married, but there's a girl that caught my eye. I know I'm married, but I think I might be a lesbian. I think I might be gay. Because me doing that was me risking my career, risking the success I had, at that moment so far in my life, and I didn't want to take that. So it was as a young person not having a pressure release valve, but that's what I call somebody you can talk to. It was really really hard for me. It was hard for me, and it's always hard for just anybody in general because you don't want to be looked at as different. You don't want to be judged as being different, or now because you're gay or whatever, you're not like me, then maybe you can't do your job. When whoever the hell I'm sleeping with has nothing to do with my damn job. So it was in the
Amen.
beginning. It was
Amen. That's
yeah,
the
it was a
greatest
struggle.
statement you just said right there.
Yes, it was a struggle in the beginning, but after you got to learn how to build confidence and not use whatever sets you apart from somebody else as a crutch. You can't do that. And so many people use whatever difference they have in their life that sets them apart from other people. They use that as a crutch, as a pity party, as a reason to why you think somebody doesn't like you. And I cannot stand that. So once people started seeing that, what? First of all, when we're having a conversation, my sexuality shouldn't even come up if I'm just talking to you about business. So I don't walk around saying, hey, did you fuck your wife last night? That's not my business. I don't care. Like, so don't ask me. So I never use that as like as a conversation topic starter. If somebody asks me, I'll correct them and say my wife. I do that now all the time. Because everybody's like, oh, but you don't look like you're gay. I'm like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I
Somebody
know,
tell me what
right?
that is. What does that look like?
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. But in the beginning, it was a struggle. But you just got to learn how to have your confidence, do your job, and sometimes do a little bit better than other people. To shut them up, and just not use it as a crutch. The people no, and I come to realize nobody cares. That's the biggest thing. But it's the fear of walking out of that closet because you don't want to ruffle the feathers or put the waves in the ocean. You want everything to stay calm and cool and collected. If I throw this out there, it's like, oh my God, how are they going to take it? You
How they
know what?
gonna
After a while,
backfire on you, right?
exactly. And I tell people I live my life by 6 F's: fucking, feeding, financing, family, the first and the 15th. If somebody
Yeah.
around me is not dealing with them 6 things in my life, you can kick rocks.
Amen. Amen to
Only the
that.
people that are contributing to those 6 things in my life will have an emotional attachment to me. If you don't, I don't care what you think because I'm living my life for me. I have to make myself happy. If something happens to me, are you gonna let me come and live with you and you gonna pay my bills? No. So why do I care what you think? So you got to learn how to hold that. And people are like, you know what? I like her. She has confidence. Don't let nothing bother you. You can't. Life is too short. Live your life, be who you are, walk in your purpose, find your truth, and stick with it. And when you own it, when you love yourself and you own who you are, life is so grand. And the respect that comes back from people is so amazing. It is so amazing. And they're like, it's something about you. And you're like, what? I don't even know what it is. You're just confident. You got to have the confidence.
I read somewhere in your materials, or it was either in your book itself, that being married to a man was akin to having AIDS. Can you tell us that?
But no, so I was saying, like, when people think that you're gay, it's like, oh my God, you can't touch it. Oh my God, don't talk to my kids. Oh my, like, we're gonna pass it off to somebody. Like, if I sneeze on you, you're gonna catch it. If I bleed on you, you can't catch gayness. You know what I mean? And people sometimes have that that's in my head. That's how I feel like people who are homophobic. That's how they fear. You're not gonna catch gay. That's not a thing. It's not a virus. It's not a cold. It drives me nuts when they do that because they're so standoffish. They shut you out of their life. They get so scared. They don't know what to do. And it's like, calm down. I'm like, I'm not. You're okay. You're fine. You're not gonna die if I touch you. You're not gonna die. You're not gonna catch anything from me. You're good. I'm not contagious. And that's where it irritates me because it's like you might as well put it in the same category as when people first started finding out people had AIDS and HIV, and it was like, oh my God, don't breathe on me, don't touch me, don't sneeze, wear gloves, put a face mask on, dude. And it's like, what in the world? Are you serious? It's ridiculous. It is so ridiculous. It's not even funny. So that's when I said that. That's what I was equating it to because it just seems like whenever people are scared of what they don't know. That fight or flight thing takes over, they'll either fight you, be against it 110%, or they will shut you out of their life and fly away from you. And it's ridiculous. It should not be that way. Love who you love. Don't discriminate on somebody because of who they're in love with. Who they're fucking has nothing to do with you. What they eat don't make you shit. And I just live life that way.
I'm reading something in the chat that makes me very sad. I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to ask you to speak to her. Let me get this. Where is it? Lasha wrote. Okay, I can't. Oh, here it is. No, it wasn't it. That someone basically smeared Dyke on her doorstep with dog shit. How fucked up is that?
Well, first of all, they a nasty ass individual if they're walking around with dog shit in their hands smeared.
That's true.
You know what? What's her name? Lasha
Senya.
Lasha, baby. Let me tell you this: if you are listening.
Oh, she's listening.
You should have went out there and drew a smiley face over there and said, you know what, if I'm a dyke, I'm going to be the biggest and the baddest dyke you're going to ever fucking find in your life and walk in it, baby. People are going to say what they want to say. Let them talk. The minute you start answering to that, the minute you start entertaining that is when the problem comes in. If you entertain clowns, they will keep performing for you. Don't give them the time of day. You should have went out there and put some roses beside it or put a dog collar on there. Dress it up, because if you allow people to get to you, they will play on that. But if they realize they can't hurt you, they can't do anything to bring you down, they'll leave you alone because they're like, fuck, I keep wasting my energy. You're not giving them anything back, and they'll leave you alone. But when you start feeding into them, that's what's going to keep them going. Don't feed into it. Go out there and you own it. Yep. Then get a T-shirt made to say dyke on it and just walk around with it on. I don't know. But you don't let it wear you down. It's only what you answer to that is when it becomes a problem. Don't answer to that. You know who you are. Be confident. Walk in your purpose. Own who you are. And that's it.
That's a great way to say it. And she said, I'm listening, hon. So there you go. Now, let me ask you about your book. Why the title, Unapologetically Favored? Why?
So that title came from, it was kind of like a culmination of everything that I had been through in my life. And it was actually one incident at one of my commands back in 2016, I think it was.
3 years ago.
Yes. And it was like a leadership situation, like miscommunication. And then, my master chief, he had an issue with me, but he didn't want to talk to me about it. Then it hurt my feelings, and we just kind of went back and forth, and it made it feel like an awkward working relationship. And long story short, I had a pastor. We were having a function at the church on the base, and had a pastor tell me, "You ever heard the story about Ruth?" And I said, I was like, I'm church, but I ain't church. Like, I go to church, but I'm like, I wouldn't all in the Bible like that. So he tells me the story about Ruth, and the story is, Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi, go out into this field, and it was some ladies in the field picking wheat, whatever it was they were picking, and Ruth would take her mother-in-law, Naomi, out in the field. They would pick up all the scraps. Like, every night they would pick up all the scraps. After all the ladies had left the field, pick up all the scraps. So one day the king comes down, and he's just like, who is this beautiful lady out here with her mother-in-law every day, every night, cleaning up the rest of the stuff in the field, making sure everything looks good? Bring her up here. I want to meet her. So Ruth comes up, meets the king. They fall in love, get married, live happily ever after. Meanwhile, all the ladies were in the field were like, well, we've been out here for like, I don't know, umpteen hours a day, and you ain't said nothing to us. What about us? We're doing all the work. But he was like, I didn't see that. I seen her at the end, pretty much doing everything behind the scenes and not complaining about it and making a way and making sure, taking care of people genuinely, being nice, being loving, being caring, whatever. And so he looked at me and he said, favor is not fair and it's unapologetic. So are you mad that you have favor, or are you mad because your leadership won't apologize to you? And like my whole world stopped. And I said, you know what? After this, like my whole life started flashing back. Like, I don't know, like a time warp, something in my head. And I was like, you know what? I will not apologize for being a female, being African-American, being a lesbian in the military. I will not apologize for all the friendships that I have made throughout the military with some of like some great military leaders that people would love to, be introduced to. I have the privilege of knowing them and being their friends and a confidant and mentor and everything else. I'm not going to apologize for the failures that I've had in my life and the bounce back that I made, being resilient after that. I'm not going to apologize. I just kept going down the list of everything. I said, you know what? I'm not going to apologize for this. I'm not going to apologize. I don't want somebody to tell me I'm sorry. And I'm favored. There is something about me, a reason why I keep winning. It's a reason why people keep seeing things in me to offer me different positions, to put me, in different areas of my life. It's something going on. I don't know what it is, but I said, you know what? From now on, I'm going to be unapologetically favored. And that title just kind of sums up my entire life and everything that I have been through, the friendships I've made, when I was down in my darkest, and I still came back out on top in the light. I thought I was being buried alive, but I said, you know what, God was planting me so that I could grow again into the person I am now. I said, sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for in life, because when you ask for certain things, you might get drugged through a whole lot of shit to get to that end result. And and that's what was happening with me, but I didn't see it at the time. I just felt like my life was in shambles. God was punishing me. Why am I here? I'm not worthy of this. This is fucking ridiculous. But I went through that so I could have a story to tell and be on this talk show with you tonight. So that's, you gotta have, you have to go through the storm.
Here's another question in the chat, which is actually a little different, but it links up to the second guest. Does she believe in ETs? Meaning you, of course.
I sure do. I believe in ghosts. I am an avid ghost hunter, watcher. I am an avid paranormal person. Oh my goodness, I love the Halloween time when it's like just nonstop, like, haunted houses, the most haunted places in America. I love that stuff. I do believe there are other things out there. There's just so many things that are so unexplained, and it's a wealth of knowledge that we don't know, because we're always constantly discovering what else do we not know that probably won't be discovered for like 200 years from now after we're all dead and gone. I think there's a whole other world out there. We just haven't gotten to it yet, but they know we're here.
That's true.
I do believe that.
That's true. Mm-hmm. And in all throughout history, Bible, before that, Bhagavad Gita, there are instances, it's definitely something that's not from here.
Yes, and even our pilots, like some of our fighter pilots, they will tell you when they're flying sometimes they do witness weird things and they have no explanation for it. So I'm like, even they'll come back and tell us like, yeah, it's something up there. We don't know what it is. Like, it was here and we look up and it's gone, or it's like millions of miles away and it comes back and we're like, just zip, zip. And we're like, oh, this is weird. This is crazy. So I do know there's something else out. I'm not going to say I believe. I know there's something else out there besides us.
More questions for you. Is there a military protocol for ETs or UFOs, and what do the regular soldiers think about ETs?
To my knowledge, I don't know if there's any policy or procedures or instructions that governs anything having to do with that. I'm pretty sure there is. Area 51 is a thing. It probably is, but I have no idea what that is. And a lot of, and with the military service members, I think we're all on the same accord, kind of like, we kind of know or we feel like there's something out there just by stories we hear, the information, that comes along and we're watching the things that we just kind of commonly know about. But everybody's just individual. It just depends on them and if they really think there's something out there or not. We don't all have like the same exact thought process or belief, so to speak.
I'm sure you heard of the USS Nimitz incident, right, with Commander David Fravor?
Oh, I've heard that one recently, or?
Well, they released it recently, the video, the Tic Tac
Oh
UFO.
no. Oh no, I haven't seen that.
Oh, you have to see it. It's
Oh my goodness.
crazy. This
Oh,
thing
okay.
travels 27,000 miles per hour above radar ceiling, 80,000 feet to 20,000 feet, 0.57 seconds.
Oh
Literally.
wow. What?
Yeah, and they can't even get
Oh.
a target lock on it. No rotors, no heat signature, nothing. It's crazy. Look up DoD footage after, and if I had time afterwards, if I didn't have a second guest, I would definitely stay on with you to send them with you. But I will do this. After I finish with him, I'll call you back and I'll send you that footage so you can see it and tell me about
Yeah,
it.
I'm interested in that. Yes, I like to see that.
There is, okay, we have a request for you. Tell us
Okay.
a ghost personal story.
So when the house that my family lives in Greensboro, North Carolina, when we first moved in there was a headstone behind our house. And we were like, it was like a small little cinder block, but it was a man's name on there with the birth date, death date. And it was always there. But to this day, I can't tell you whatever happened to that headstone. I have no idea. While we were in the house, my stepfather, so that was one thing by itself. And then my stepfather passed away in our house due to colon cancer. So he
Oh,
died
jeez.
April 16th,
Knock on
1996, I
wood.
think it was. Yes.
Yeah.
And I always tell my mom, I don't think his soul ever left. I don't think his soul ever left the house. I think it's still there. My mom is a believer as well. And it's been plenty of instances where she has called me freaked out because she would think that my brother was in the bedroom with her. My brother used to be a jokester growing up, and he would just do things to annoy you. He was just a boy, and my mom would be in her room, lounging on the bed, watching TV, on the phone, whatever, and her bed would just shake. And it would been a couple of times it has happened more than one occasion, and she would think and swear my brother was in the room messing with her, and she would get upset and yell for him, and nobody's in the room, and it's just her. And it freaked her out. She would call me like just panicked, and I'm like, "What is going on?" And she would tell me, but my brother was outside playing with his friends the whole time and had never been in the house, and it had happened so many times. Then there was a night where I remember before I was still living at home. I had a vanity my mom bought me for one of my birthdays, and I had a hair dryer on the vanity. And my mom, for some reason, the vanity, I think we had moved the vanity to my mom's room, and I was asleep. My mom and my brother were still watching TV. Excuse me, and the hair dryer just goes off. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. The
What
hair
the
dryer just goes off.
fuck?
Yes, and it just starts blow drying my hair. My mom wakes me up because she's yelling for me, like, "What are you doing? Why are you blow drying your hair at 2 o'clock in the morning?" I'm like, "I am not blow drying my hair. I am asleep." And the blow dryer was just going. That was the second thing. We went on a family trip one time, and our photos were we had a big old family portrait in the middle of a wall, like my mom and my stepdad on one side, and me and my brother on the other side, smaller frame pictures. We come back from out of town. We open the door, and the family photo is on the floor in front of these two big, I don't know, like counters or they were like side tables, end tables, but they were cherry wood, very, very heavy. And my mom loves crystal stuff, and she had like a bunch of crystal things and crystal lamps up there. And we were like, how in the world did this big old picture frame fall off the wall, bypass all that crystal and the lamp and everything else, and land on the floor in front of these two ginormous like end table things that were pressed up against the wall? To this day, we have no idea. But it was kind
Jeez.
of freaky, like what in the world?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
of
it
course
is.
it would be.
Yeah, it is. We've had something. I think that's what kind of got me into like oh my goodness, what is going on? Like, and I started just kind of watching paranormal stuff and just, yeah.
Have you ever seen shadow people or anything like that?
I have never actually seen anything like for myself. I have never seen anything. My brother, on the other hand, he's had some stories. He's had to the point where he used to come in and sleep on the floor in my bedroom as a kid because he did not like being alone by himself. We ended up having to get him like dream catchers to hang up in his room because he to make him feel protected in a way, so to speak. And every now and then he still has little bouts, but I don't know. I don't know if he has that something's drawn to him like some people do. I don't know if he's just more vulnerable. He's more open, so to speak. I have no idea.
Another question here for you. This is intern 23. Would she be interested in meeting and debriefing or briefing an ET? Befriending, sorry. I'm reading it wrong.
Ooh, not by myself. Is intern 23
By
coming with me?
yourself, right?
We going together. We gonna be battle buddies. We gonna confront that thing together. Not by myself.
I'm with you on that one. That's for damn sure. I'm scared of the paranormal, and I firmly believe in it, and I've been investigating it for 35 years since I was a child when I saw a UFO with multiple people, which I know was
Mhm.
me as a kid that just
Mhm.
saw this weird thing. Dozens of people around me, and I don't even know beyond my line of sight how many people actually were seeing this disc that was just in the sky and bouncing around in weird ways that nothing in our laws of physics would show that this thing fits in, except for maybe the shape being a little aerodynamic, but the laws of the
Mhm.
physics that we know of, it didn't fit.
Mhm.
Now, okay, so now I'm going to bring it back to your life and your book. Now, tell us, since we're coming close, and I wish we had 2 hours, I should have booked 2 hours with you, and I will next time, I promise you that.
Okay, I'll give it to you too.
Yes, and remember, I'm going to call you after the second guest to share with you that DoD footage as well, with Commander
Okay.
Fravor and the other two. There's three total.
Okay.
What other topics do you want to share about your book and about your life?
Let's see. I'm just the empowerment piece and leadership piece. You know, I think I was on a talk show not too long ago, a news show interview, and we were talking about, how to recognize if you're a good leader or what qualities a good leader needs to have. And so this is my take on it. In order to be a successful leader or even just a successful human being, I won't even say leader, just a successful human being, we all need to learn how to have empathy. We all need to understand
Love,
and learn and to kind of
empathy,
feel
right?
and know that everybody, we are not all cut from the same cloth. We're not all made the same. Some people's lives are harder, but you can't judge somebody's struggle against yours because it's not going to always be the same. Put yourself in the next person's shoes. Understand where they're coming from. Understand what makes them angry every day. Understand, what motivates them to be a better person every day. Speak to the man walking down the street. Speak to the woman walking down the street because you don't know what kind of morning they might have had. And just by us saying, good morning, how are you doing today? Or looking at somebody and smiling, you might have made somebody's day that day. Because that might have been a day they said, you know what, I'm going to go home and kill myself because I can't take it anymore. You might have saved somebody's life just by being an empathetic person. And that's all I ask for people to be. Have a little empathy, have a little heart.
Yeah, love, empathy, humility, heart. I think that sums it up all, literally. What
Yes.
we should all have, especially in this day and age. There are more school shootings than ever in history. I don't know why. Do you know why?
So this is, and it's funny because this is like I get so irritated. So when we grew up, we didn't have social media. Kids these days, and this is Courtney Kittrell's opinion, these kids today, they are so exposed. They are exposed to so many things via social media that they are not mature enough to understand. They're not mature enough to know the difference between right and wrong, what's reality and what's false. They are exposed to so many things that they're overwhelmed. And instead of saying, again, raising their hand, hey, I don't understand, what is this? They want to fit in with what they see on social media, because everybody wants to do what makes you look good. So if you got somebody on social media that's getting 5,000 likes, or Facebook is getting 10,000 likes, whatever the case may be, you want some of that. So now you're going to try to conform yourself, your lifestyle, your whatever, just like this person, so you can get some attention. Because everybody always wants to feel, needed and wanted and liked and loved. You want to fit in to something, what's trending, what's popular, what's happening, what's popping off right now. And that's what these kids are. And they don't realize that the things that you see on social media aren't real. These rappers out here that's walking around with these $1 million chains, they probably are renting from a jewelry store to advertise jewelry.
True. That's
this
true.
house that's in that video, they're renting that mansion in Miami. That's not really theirs. This car that you see on Instagram, they probably rented that car for one night, and they took all them pictures in one night. You can't believe everything that you see, but the kids are not mature enough to understand that. They're not mature enough to understand why their hormones, or you feeling the way they are, or why they're so angry, or why they don't have what next person has, or it's the competition thing is real. The lack of, no crap. We need to teach our kids right from wrong, show them real and fake. We have to do that. But a lot of the times it's left up to the teachers who are underpaid to do that, and the teachers are tired. Those babies are burnt out. They don't get paid enough to spend overtime trying to raise other kids, because whatever their home situation is, mom is working 2 and 3 jobs. Dad's tired because he's working third shift. They don't get the attention they need at home, and they're feeling behind. And they come to school, and now the teacher's trying to be the teacher and the parent and the guidance counselor and the mentor and the provider and everything else. It's so many different dominoes in this daggone puzzle that it blows my mind. But I feel like I love social media when it's used for a good cause. But I feel like these kids are exposed to too many things right now at younger ages. 13 years old, you out here worrying about, if you're obese or overweight, you trying to go on a diet, you bulimic. At 13, I was doing circle, dot. Now I got my cootie shot because I didn't want a boy to touch me.
Yeah, seriously. We lived in different times than the kids these eras. Very different.
Exactly.
Social media, I don't think like you said, if it's used for good, it is good.
Yes.
But I've seen people that literally are killing themselves to try to get verified on Twitter, or for the millions of likes on Instagram, and that's so sad. So sad. It's like that's their life goal, really.
That's the role models they have these days. It's terrible. It's terrible. And I just, that's why I tell, when I used to speak to like different groups, and it'd be like, like teenagers, I would tell the parents, like, like you just mentioned, we're raised in a different time. And so, for parents, they have to realize that it is a different time. This isn't 1970. This isn't 1980. This is 2019, about to be 2020. You can't compare your kids' stressors at school to the stressors that you had, because it was a different time back then. You weren't worried about getting kidnapped and getting killed and kids walking to school and shooting. So if your child comes home and they are standoffish, they're quiet, they're not themselves, or they're angry all the time, something is going on with your child. Sit them down. Don't threaten them. Hey, what's going on with you? What happened in school today? Are you good to go? But you should be doing that every day anyway, so your child will always know that, okay, I can trust my parents and tell them everything. Because these kids don't tell their parents everything. I know I didn't. These kids don't tell their parents everything. So the parents say, no, my child won't do X, Y, and Z. Yes, they will. Yeah. You think you know your child, but you really don't. The same way them parents thought their kids were going to shoot up a school. You think you know your child, but you don't. But the parents need to really, really get engaged. And sometimes it's okay to have open dialogue. Let your child tell you what's really bothering them. That's the only way, it's sad, but it's like the parent has to gain the trust of their child, which it seems like it's a true statement. It is a true statement. They actually have to gain the trust of their child, because a lot of times the kids aren't going to the parents telling them when things are bothering them. They're acting out, or they're quiet. So if your child is acting different, you might want to sit down and ask them, hey, what's going on, like for real? And, if they don't want to talk to you, that's fine. don't push it. Because if you keep pushing them to talk to you, you're going to keep pushing them away and they won't talk to you. So let them know, hey, well, just whenever you want to talk, just let me know. Come knock on my door. I don't care what time it is. I'm here for you, baby. I love you. You can always talk to me about anything. I will never, this is serious. I want you to be open with me. Give them that comfort. Lay out that red carpet and invite them down the aisle. Like, you have to. Because that's the only way that we can probably, help these kids before another mass school shooting happens some daggone where. We got to be open with our young people. Got to be open.
I definitely agree, and we were raised in that way where we were, like you said, I didn't tell my parents everything I did, and they told me things not to do that I ended up doing anyway. And
Exactly.
so, but again, we still had more help from them than I see children these days. Okay, let me
Mhm.
get to a couple more questions in the chat, and then I'm going to ask you one thing that I wanted to ask you, and then, of course, I want to get people to uh, where people can find you in your book. So we'll get all that.
Okay.
First, how cramped are the ships?
Woo, baby. Well, it depends on which ship you go on. So the aircraft carriers, we call them floating cities. You can have, on a deployment, you can have up to 5,000 people on one aircraft carrier. And the whole entire duration of deployment, you will probably never see the entire aircraft carrier because it's just that big. You can have 5,000 people, and I want to say about 90 jets or aircraft up there on the flight deck and in the hangar bay at one time. So it's pretty. The hangar bay and everything is pretty spacious. Berthings where we sleep, quarters on the USS Enterprise. When I first got there in 2010, we had 324 racks. It was all female, and it was like
Wow.
three different sections. But you got to think it's three. It's a three-level bunk bed, so it gets kind of cramped depending on how the berthings are made and the way the racks are facing. It can get pretty cramped. And then as you kind of rank up, you get a little a little more senior rank. Your berthing becomes a little bit smaller. You have a little bit more storage space, a little bit more room. But it's not. I mean, it's not bad. It only starts getting cramped after about like the first month, and you're looking at the same people every day in your work center, and you're like, I can't. I'm starting to get claustrophobic. You guys need to go away. But other than that, it's not too bad. The smaller ships though are worse. They're really really bad.
What's the motto of the Navy?
As far
Well,
as
like Marines, the first, or what is it? The something in the proud. There, I know there's got to be a motto for that
they probably
branch.
don't change it. I think I don't know, let the journey begin, or I want to say is that the most recent one? I think every like 5 years they change our motto, and
Yeah.
I quit keeping up. I really keep quitting up. Let the journey begin. Is that the newest one? That's the one that sticks out in my head the most. I don't know if it's because I like it
Actually,
or
you know
what.
what? That's what I've seen on commercials, so it probably
I'm like, is that the
is.
newest one? I think
Yeah,
that's what the newest
yeah,
one is.
right, right. No, the Marines is actually the few and the proud. That's what it is for the
Yes,
Marines.
that's the Marines. Yes, I think I
Okay.
was let the journey begin.
Uh, okay, another thing here. What is your job? Because it wasn't, you're still in it. What is your job and was it in the past in the military?
So right now I work in the aviation side. So I work with fighter jets, F-18 fighter attack jets. I am an aviation administration person. I do all the paperwork that comes with the jets flying, inspections, maintaining doing all the maintenance paperwork. So when the guys fix the jets, maintainers go out there and fix the jets, we handle all the paperwork, inspections, keeping the actual records of the aircraft up to date, ensuring everything's good to go so our pilots can fly, do God's work, and come home to their families at night. So that is my job.
Now, another one here links it back to the paranormal, which
Hmm.
is, have you seen a UFO?
I have never seen a UFO.
Well, I think that's probably going to start changing very soon, especially once I show you some footage after this. Okay, now, because I went a couple minutes over, because it was definitely necessary, because I want to give everyone a chance to ask their questions. And like I said, I should have booked you for a full 2 hours. And you have to let me know when you're in LA for sure, too. Um,
Oh yeah, most definitely.
where can people find you and your book?
So I have a website, www, of course, unapologeticallyfavored.com. And on that website, you can also purchase my book. My book is available, Unapologetically Favored, is available on Amazon.com and online with Barnes and Nobles as well. Overseas, it's you can go on Booktopia. In Australia, Waterstone Bookstore, and that is in, I think it's Piccadilly, London. And I think there's some stores up in Canada as well as Switzerland and New Zealand area as well. So it's all over the world. So you can Google it, and it'll pop up in a bookstore somewhere.
Speaking of when I said having you back on there, to also request for you already. So that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, with that being said, I want to thank you again for your service. I want to say God bless you for
Thank you so much.
everything you've done in your life. And I will call you back after I finish with the second guest. With that being said, I'm going to transition to him now.
Okay, we all have a good night. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure and their pleasure for sure. That's a fact.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
I'll call you very soon. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, now we're going to transition to the one and only Grant Cameron. Let me see if I can get him on here real quick. Just spoke to him about maybe an hour and a half ago. Yeah, about that. Let's find out where he is. Mr. Cameron. Mr. Cameron, where are you, brother? Grant wants to connect. We're connecting here, brother. We got him. Great friend, known him for 8 years, 7 years, 7-ish, 8 years, about that time. I'm sure you guys are hearing this little Skype ringing. It's kind of hard these days with the new OBS to link one to the other unless they're both on at the same time, which didn't quite happen because I tried to grab Grant on while we had her on. She's a great girl, really cool. Really, really freaking cool. I definitely recommend reading her book. I had a chance to read it preparing for this interview, and unfortunately we didn't get to all the topics. There are a shitload, as you could tell, from what we talked about, from personal growth to leadership. Grant, you're not answering, dear friend. Let's try one other way. Where is he? Let's find Grant Cameron. Come on, Grant. Here we go again. We're calling Grant. Grant Cameron's coming on. We're going to be talking about UFOs in music. Let me try to get a hold of him on his cell phone as well. He stepped out for coffee, which is, of course, you do need coffee, I guess, especially where he is. I'm going to write him as well on his cell phone. This is pretty awkward. I don't want to sign off here because I don't want to lose this cool audience we have here. Grant Cameron, where are you, dear friend? Answer the phone. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make it one step further. While you guys chit-chat, give me a second. Let me call this bro from my cell phone here and grab one that's sitting in a corner of a desk and say, where the fuck are you? Oh, hey, Grant is here. Grant Cameron.
Dr. J. You
Oh,
want to call? I couldn't pick it up.
God bless you for answering. It's so great to have you back. Long time. And
It's been a long time.
now let's dive right into the topic of what I put in the information of the show, UFOs in music, because there's so much.
There is, and I'll give you some new stuff.
Okay.
I think I've sort of figured out what's going on. I wrote a book, as you've got, called Tuned In.
Yes.
The Paranormal World of Music. And you are aware, I think you actually had Chris Bledsoe on your show.
I did.
Chris Bledsoe at one point phones me up and he says, I got a message from the Guardians for you. They want you to know the messages in the music. And I said, well, you're probably talking to the wrong guy. I'm not a musical guy. I don't listen to music, whatever. And because Neil Young was involved, he told me Neil Young was involved. That got me dragged down the rabbit hole. And Neil Young grew up in Winnipeg, where I live. And Winnipeg's not famous for very much of anything. And that got me dragged into the thing. And I started seeing this association. And that's what the book was basically about, was the fact that the vast majority of musicians, major musicians, appears to have some sort of connection to the UFO phenomena, but they also have a connection to the paranormal phenomena. So why I called it the paranormal world of music is that I showed that a lot of musicians have this UFO connection, but they also have a paranormal connection in terms of being able to get music. For example, I'll give you an example. Most musicians, major musicians, cannot read and write music. So that's the Beatles, the Stones, Coldplay, Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, Barbra Streisand. None of them could read and write music. And because the way it works is that the left brain, the rational analytical brain, if you're a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, you're using your rational analytical left brain. And left brain music is send your kid to the university, practice music, practice, read music, go through musical theory and that sort of stuff. Those are never the great musicians. The great musicians are people who get a guitar, they're sitting in their room and they're just playing around and a song pops in their head. And the prime example is one song, Yesterday, by Paul McCartney. One of the most produced songs of the 20th century, came to him in a dream. So I started looking at this sort of connection, and you get the UFO connection. You have this idea that they're all into the UFO thing, but you worked with Roger Lear there in LA on the alien implants, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So Roger Lear was asked
for Surgery 17 too.
Yeah. So he was asked the question, what's common between all experiencers? He said they're all right brain creative people. That defines a musician. Right brain creative. It's the female brain. It's not the male ego brain, the left brain. It's the right brain. So most musicians. And there's actually a statement that was made that Roger Lear and Daryl Sims, who were doing work on implants, said they had 250 patients, and that every single one of them, the implant was on the left side of the body. The left side of the body is run by the right brain. So whatever the implants are all about, it has nothing to do with your left rational analytical brain. It has to do with the musical brain, the right brain. So what musicians are able to do, and this is, I also wrote a book called Inspired, The Paranormal World of Creativity. And I went, not just music, I looked at inventions, I looked at art, I looked at all the different types of things, book inventions like the Wizard of Oz, the Harry Potter books, and this whole thing where people are getting these downloads where they're just sitting there and all of a sudden it just pops into their head. I even just put a musical one on my Facebook just a couple minutes ago, and this has to do with a song by Coldplay. I was always told Coldplay had a connection to UFOs, and I really couldn't get it. I'm sitting with my lawyer, Michael Hall, in LA, and we're listening to the radio, and I can actually do this now. I can hear a song on the radio, and I know it's a download song. I know that they did not rationally, analytically figure this thing out. It popped in their head. And there was this song called Viva la Vida, comes across the radio, and I'm saying to Michael, what's the song? What? Because I have no musical background. And so we copied a couple of words down. We pulled the lyrics. And, of course, it was Michael or Chris Martin who gets this song 3:45 in the morning. It just pops into his head, and it becomes one of these songs that, has 700 million hits on YouTube. So it's this basic thing where it's the ability to shut down the rational analytical left brain, pop into the field, grab the music, the invention, the art project, whatever it is, and bring it back into the field. And some people can do it. Some people can shut down the noise in the brain, and some people can't. And experiencers are in that thing. For example, most experiencers say they've got paranormal phenomena, and paranormal phenomena is the same thing. It's the ability to shut down and pop into the field. Or 70% of all experiencers say they've seen a ghost, and this kind of thing. And it's this ability to use the right brain. And the more I looked at it, I actually figured at one point they had every single musician involved in this thing. And the idea I got with music is the idea that if you are, say, a being from another planet or another dimension or wherever these people are from, if you want to get a message across, you're not going to talk to somebody who's 25 years old because they've already figured it out. They've got all their biases, all their prejudices. You're not going to change anything in their mind. What you want is somebody who's like between 10 and 25 years old, who's doesn't want to listen to their parents anymore. They want their own identity. They're looking for something in the world to do. And those people, their major people that they look up to is musicians. So that's where you put the message through. And even though people are singing these lyrics, they don't realize, like you get the lyric, very famous lyric, Let It Be by McCartney. And everybody thinks it has to do with Mother Mary. So it says, in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be. And what you find out when you get the actual backstory to the whole thing is his mother died from cancer when he was 14 years old. Her name was Mary. The Beatles were breaking up in 1969. This is when he has this dream, and his mother comes to him in a dream, and she said, Paul, it'll be okay, let it be. And that's where the lyrics come from. In times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be. And you start getting this thing where a lot of the stuff we think we're inventing is coming out of this field, and it's the ability to get in the field. And so I worked on this, and then I actually did the book, and it just kept coming. People kept sending me these stories of musicians and where these songs are coming from. And then these bizarre synchronicities. And I want to tell you some of these, because these are really wild synchronicities, and I hadn't really had it in my life. But let me give you an example. So I get a message from Pia Knudsen from Denmark. Mm-hmm. And she sends me a thing, and she says, do you know that Joe Wood is doing a podcast? And Joe Wood was married to Ronnie Wood from the Rolling Stones for like 30 years. And she's deep down the UFO rabbit hole. She had this dramatic UFO sighting. And then she's in the Stones plane with her son. And this thing comes flying, this orb comes flying down the side of the plane and goes back up the side of the plane. And he says, Mom, what is that? She says, I have no idea. So she's like into it. So she's doing with Gary Hesseltine. I don't know if you've interviewed Gary, but Gary's a friend of mine. So I got the message from Pia. She said, Gary Hesseltine's being interviewed by Joe Wood. So I said, oh, cool. So and I'm thinking immediately, I wrote the book Tuned In, The Paranormal World of Music. And I'm thinking, I wonder if she interviewed some of the musicians. So, of course, I go onto her website, and, of course, she had interviewed Robbie Williams, who you know is a major guy.
Yeah, he came up with Oasis.
Yeah, so she interviews him, and he talks very openly about his experiences and about the paranormal stuff that has happened. It was the most exposed interview he's ever done. And then she did, so the first one she did was Shawn Ryder. Now, Shawn Ryder was a famous British musician, and he's in my book, Tuned In. And he, as a young kid, I think he's delivering newspapers. He has like 100 UFOs at one time. He sees these 100 UFOs flying over. So I look and I go, oh my goodness, she's interviewed, Robbie Williams, and she's interviewed Shawn Ryder. So I go, I download the first version, and I get Shawn Ryder. I'm listening to the interview. And at one point during the interview, Joe Wood says, let me ask you, Shawn, why do you think they picked you? Why do you think the aliens picked you? And he said, oh, I think I was tuned in. And I'm going, oh my God, that's in my book. And he's in my book. And it was just so weird, the synchronicity. So I contact Pia back, and I say, you're not going to believe this, Pia. She did this. I listened to the first interview by Shawn Ryder, and he said he was tuned in. That's the name of my book. As she's reading, this is the true story. As she's reading my email, Melinda Leslie is doing a Zoom broadcast. She's doing a presentation to Copenhagen, to their group there. And as she's reading the email, Melinda Leslie changes the slide on the PowerPoint, and there is a photograph of a Ryder truck. And you see that kind of stuff, or the bizarre synchronicities of the music thing, where you say that there's no way this stuff is chance. And the most bizarre one is the one with Bono, or Bono, whatever you pronounce his name. He's in Wembley Stadium. I don't know if you ever heard this story. He's in Wembley Stadium, and he wants to he's doing a concert, and most musicians like Chris Martin and most of these musicians have a problem sleeping at night. So Bono's up in the middle of the night, he can't sleep, and he's playing a movie called Blue Velvet. And in Blue Velvet, Roy Orbison is singing a song. He actually sings the song in the movie. And the song is called In Dreams. And he gets this song in a dream. And it's about he's in love with this woman. He can never be with the woman. He's not allowed to be around her or whatever. The only time he can be with this woman is in his dreams. And then when he wakes up, she's gone again. So he sings this song in there. And so Bono's playing this song, and he's playing it over and over. He's got this tape looped, and he eventually falls asleep late in the morning, and he wakes up and he's got this song in his head. And he's going, wow, this sounds like a Roy Orbison song. So he goes into Wembley Stadium. They're doing the setup for the concert that night. And he says to the rest of the band, he says, guess what? I got this song in my head. And it sounds like Roy Orbison. So he plays it to them and they go, yeah, that's a pretty good song. You should do that song. So they play the concert. They go down to the dressing room after the concert ends, and they're sitting in the concert, sitting in the dressing room, and all of a sudden there's a knock, knock, knock on the door, and the security is there, and they say, someone's here from America. They want to talk to you. And who is it? It's Roy Orbison. He came from America. And they go, Roy Orbison is here? And they go, yeah. So Roy Orbison comes in. He says, you guys were fantastic. He says, you were fantastic. He says, I'd love to play with you guys. Do you happen to have a song I could do? And so Bono says, yeah, I kind of got a song this morning. And so they do this song called Mystery Woman, and it goes to number 5 in the United States, number 2 on the charts in Great Britain. And you get these kind of things with these bizarre synchronicities of events that happen. I'll give you another one. John Lennon. Everybody knows the story that John Lennon has the UFO sighting. He has a second sighting that's talked about by Uri Geller. So Uri Geller tells the story that John Lennon has this second UFO encounter where he's with Yoko Ono.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the old story of the abduction thing where he wakes up. He can't wake up Yoko Ono. She's asleep. He can't wake her up. Something's going on. There's light and stuff like in the room. And so he gets up and there's these beings there. And they give him this it looks like a bronze egg. They give him this sort of bronze egg. It's in his hand. He wakes up in the morning with his bronze egg in his hand. Yoko is awake. Then he tells her the whole story. He doesn't remember much more than that. So what happens is he goes and he has a meeting with Uri Geller in New York City. They're in a restaurant. So he says to Uri, he says, Uri, he says, I got this thing. He tells him the whole story about these beings and giving them this egg. He said, this may be my ticket to another planet, but I don't want it. You can have it. I don't want it. So he gives it to Uri Geller like in 1978 or 79, whatever. So Uri
was popular in the U.S. actually. That's the time frame.
He hung around with the Stones, and he hung around with he lived actually very close to John Lennon in New York. And so Uri has this thing, and he's never had it analyzed. He's kept it on his person. So anyway, a couple of months ago, Sid Goldberg from Gaia is going over and he's doing a special series on Uri Geller. He says, well, what do you want to ask Uri Geller? I said, well, you won't got to ask him about the egg. Ask him to show you this egg thing that John Lennon gave him. So he goes there, and so he's in Israel with Uri, and he sends me back this photograph. And here's Sid Goldberg holding this photograph with his hand out, and he's holding the egg, sort of showing it to me. Like, Uri, I asked the question about the egg. Here's the egg. He's letting me hold the egg. So I write him back an email, and I say to him, oh, Sid, good boy. Maybe your ticket to another planet. Because that's what John Lennon says. Maybe this is my ticket to another planet, but I don't want it. You can have it. So I said to Sid, I said, oh, good boy. Maybe your ticket to another planet. He's in a restaurant as this email comes into the restaurant with Uri Geller. And everybody says, Uri makes up stuff, all this sort of stuff. Well, you have to see, does he make up the next event in this story? So they're sitting there, and he says, well, Grant's this guy from Canada, and he's explaining all this kind of stuff, and he wanted me to see the egg and all this sort of stuff. He says, oh, look at this. There's an actual email coming in from Grant right now. So he opens up the email to read the email, which says, good boy, maybe your ticket to another planet. And he's reading it to Uri, and as he's reading it, John Lennon's Imagine starts coming on the radio in the restaurant.
Wow, that's a serious synchronicity.
Yuri starts pointing at the ceiling. He says, listen, it's Imagine by John Lennon. And so I always say to people, they say, oh, Yuri's this or whatever. I says, what, did he make up the music too? I mean, because I got dragged into this thing. I'll give you one last one. This is one that John Lennon, again, a John Lennon story. So John Lennon, and this is the story that he and Yoko Ono believed they were the reincarnation of Robert and Elizabeth Browning, famous poets. So one morning, Yoko Ono wakes up with this song in her head, and it's Elizabeth Browning poem, and she's got the song, the music to this thing.
Is this post John Lennon or this before he died?
Well, this is just before he died. This is the last song. Somebody says these are the last words that were recorded in his journal. This happens just before he dies. So he's in the Bahamas. She wakes up. She's got this song in her head. And so she phones up John, and she says, John, I got this. And she sings him the song. And this song was produced. I can't remember the name of the song, but she sings this song for him. And she said, it's Elizabeth Browning. And it was the idea, well, we're the reincarnation of Elizabeth Browning and Robert Browning. So you should do a song from Robert Browning and send it to me. So he says, okay, good. And this, of course, is 1978. There's no internet. There's none of that kind of stuff. So he says, okay, take all the Robert Browning poems and mail them to me, and I'll pick one of the songs, and I'll make a song for you. So she says, okay, good. So she hangs up the phone. 4 hours later, John writes her back, and he says, or phones her back, and he says, you're not going to believe what happened. He's sitting there watching a movie in the morning, and on this thing, there's a guy, I can't remember the exact name, tone of the story, but it's a baseball player who's in love with some girl, and he sends her a poem by Robert Browning. Rabin is Ibn Ezra. And so it says, when our time has come, we will be as one together. And so that's how the song starts. When our time has come, we will be as one. And he writes this song with this Robert Browning poem, and he brings it back. They produce it on a music box in the bedroom, and then John is shot shortly after that. So that's the only version that they had. And Yoko actually talked about this thing disappearing. But you have this situation where he's supposed to produce this song by Robert Browning. She has the Elizabeth Browning song. And they put this thing together, and this bizarre idea that they believe they were in the reincarnation. And in the album, when they produced the album, they actually have John and Yoko Ono dressed up like Robert and Elizabeth Browning in the inside notes on the album. So you get these bizarre synchronicity things where you realize, like, you think it's just music, but when you start getting the backstories to this music, you realize it's a really weird thing. And the whole idea is it's almost like the experiencer thing. They're tapped into this right brain world. They're able to cut off the world, cut out the noise, and pop into that world and put in messages. Even the whole thing with Moody Blues, who a lot of people say, oh, Moody Blues, I listen to Moody Blues all the time. It means they were all abducted in 1967 in England. And Pinder went to Colin Andrews, him and the lead guitarist, and said, we were in a room before we were born. We remember that. And we were with these elders, and they said, you're going to go into the world, and you're going to put lyrics into songs to raise the consciousness of the world. And they talked about how they came back into the world. These kind of bizarre things, like as if these people have been chosen to do a mission to bring this kind of stuff. And you get, them completely abducted. Or I don't know if you ever interviewed Steve Boucher out of St. Catharines, Ontario. Same thing. The entire band was abducted. There was four plus a guy that they'd picked up just before they went. They were going from wherever they were playing. Picked up a fifth guy, and they were all abducted. And you have this bizarre thing where they seem to have this interest in musicians. But I think what it's got to do with this right brain world where musicians are very right brained. They can't read or write music. They don't really care what anybody thinks about them, and they're in that sort of mysterious world where a lot of experiencers are as well.
And here's something in the chat about another, I believe it's a band, and it's from Ronan Soul 9. Has he ever heard of North Lane?
No, that's the thing. I don't have any background. So what people do is they send me stuff like this, and I check it out. I'll bet you there's going to be something. So it's called Northland?
North Lane, Lane.
Yeah, I'm sure if you put it, because usually what I do is I'll put in the band. It's usually the lead singer too. It's not usually the drummer. It's usually the lead singer that is the guy that's the experiencer. And so what I'll do is I'll take the lead singer from the band, I'll put it in, and I'll put in UFO, I'll put in UFO abduction, and the screen will light up. I remember the big band that came out of Winnipeg was the Guess Who. They put American Woman, which is number 3 on the chart. It was for 3 weeks was on the chart, number 1 in the United States. And they tell how this song was created. They did not write the song. They just came on stage one night and sang it. And some guy was in the front row was bootlegging the show. He had it on a tape, and they grabbed the tape. And after the show, they were going, "Where'd this song come from?" But you get that kind of stuff where people get these instantaneous songs. They just come to them in under 5 minutes. I have a whole appendix in the book where I have maybe 150 songs that came in under 10 minutes. And so I looked at the lead singer there, who is Burton Cummings. And most people wouldn't know who he is, except that he's like a major band out of Winnipeg. So I put in Burton Cummings, and I put in alien abduction, and the screen lit up, and up comes his Facebook page. And he's on his Facebook page talking to his people who won't even know what he's talking about. And he's saying, I'm 60, and he's talking in caps, so he's yelling. He's saying, I'm 64 years old. I'll say whatever I want. I don't care what anybody thinks. They're mistreating Whitley Strieber. I know how he feels. And he's going on. I'm going, holy cow, I couldn't believe it. And you get that. That's when I sort of thought, like, I go, they got them all. They got them all. They've tapped into these people, these musicians, and whether it's aliens or spirit people or whatever. And that's the idea that I've gotten, is it's a field. So I'm writing a book called Contact Modalities, where I say, whether you're a psychic, a medium, reading tarot cards, UFO experiencer, whatever, it's all the same thing. You're just shutting that part of the brain down. You're popping into the field. You're talking to dead people. You're talking to aliens. You're doing whatever. And then you come back into this world. And some people, as with, say, any profession, like hockey players or baseball players, there are baseball players and then there are baseball players. Like some people are sort of mediums, and then there's really good mediums who know how to shut it down. And it's this ability to dissociate. And so what you'll get is a lot of very creative people or a lot of mediums and stuff. You're going to find situations like head injuries, childhood abuse issues, stuff like that, where people are near-death experiences. 37% of all near-death, of all people who claim they've been abducted also say they've had a near-death experience. And so the thing is, like, how is that possible? Because that's 8 times the national average for near-death experience. Like, how could they possibly have these two events? And what it comes down to is you're assuming it's one life. If it's multiple lives, then we plan to do this. It's like the Moody Blues. We planned to come in. We knew we were going to be musicians before we came in. The same as this Steve Boucher, this guy who was in this band in Canada, was abducted. He said he remembered before he was born, he was the being was with him, and they were looking down at the planet. He said, you got to go down there. He said, I'm not going down there. I heard about this place. I'm not going there. No way. And he said, no, we need you down there. We need to go. No, I'm not going down there. And these people remember before they were born. And so you came to the idea that life is a lot less random than people think it is. That if it's multiple lives, you came in here to do something. And the musicians, it appears that they have a mission the same as you would have a mission, that we've come to learn something or to bring something to the world or whatever it is, that we just sort of think that's just a random meaning. We're just biological robots in a meaningless universe. And it's not that way. When you look at the UFO phenomena or all the paranormal phenomena, you start to realize the world is a lot more strange and a lot more magnificent than just a random world.
Let me ask you, I'm actually holding Inspired in my hand, another book you wrote too.
Yeah.
And in it, in the back, you have an appendix with all the songs, and literally there's hundreds that were inspired, and it blows me away. Now, when I first heard Blink-182 Aliens Exist, I was thinking, wow, that didn't quite fit the band, but okay, I loved aliens, that. But then, now we have Tom DeLonge to the Stars Academy. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's the same thing. He's sort of on the edge. Very creative. That's his whole thing. He's not really a researcher. He'll admit that. He's not a researcher. He's a creative storyteller. He's a guy that's fascinated in this sort of subject. And you'll find a lot of musicians, it's the same thing. Like I even have I think it's in the Tuned In book. Oh, no, we pulled that out because of the size of the book. But we pulled out the number of covers. It's unbelievable how many musicians put UFOs on the cover. Whereas if you get in the regular world, until when Blink came along, now it's sort of more acceptable to be the crazy UFO guy. But before then, it was like you would never be associated with UFOs, but you get the bands and they're putting UFOs and flying saucers on the cover of their albums. And it was like dozens and dozens and dozens of them. And it was and there was no way this is coincidence. It was almost like you start looking at it and you realize there's a pattern here. Even this thing where you're looking in the back of these indexes where you get the songs that came in dreams or the songs that came in under 10 minutes. And they are the biggest songs of all times. That's where I can say that I can now do it. I can sit in a restaurant And when a song comes on, I go, get the lyrics for that song. That
Yeah.
song's been downloaded. You can tell because it's never the B-side song. It's the greatest songs of all times. Sting's biggest song came, he said, in under 10 minutes. He woke up, it was in a dream. He woke up and he said it was like, $2,000 a day, I think he was making. Or you take Chris Martin, where he does the song, what's the name of the song? Orange, where it comes to him in like minutes. And they said, so well, how did that change your life? He said, like $3 million. And he said he showed it to the other guys. They were watching a soccer game, and he got this song almost instantaneously. And he went to them, and they said, "Oh, that's cool, okay." And they kept watching soccer. They didn't even pick it up. And this song came, or Gwyneth Paltrow talks about him getting a song where he says, "Hang on." He said she got this weird look in his eyes, and he goes running upstairs, and she said it was less than 5 minutes, probably 3 minutes. He said, "Come up here, listen to this." And he has this song, and one of the most famous songs he'd written came in under 3 minutes. And you get this kind of stuff where people are tapping into a field. And so what it comes down to is, if we understand this and we accept this to be a fact, then it's like, can we hack into the field? It's almost like I use the example. You're walking down for example, experiencers. By the Free Survey, 40% of all experiencers, people who claim they've been abducted or have had the UFO experience or whatever, say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. So I used to run buildings at University of Manitoba. So you're in a building and you see, okay, this building is chemistry 101, this one's physics 101, this one's calculus 101, and this door says everything in the universe. Which door are you going to try to go in? You're going to go in the one, and if the door is locked, well, then you're going to try to pick the lock. And so why would you not try to hack this thing if you've got these experiences? 42% of all experiencers have mathematical, scientific, or technical material in their head that they did not learn in school. It's the same process. It's popping into their head. They're able, the beings, for example, if the beings are giving them the ability to see the answer to everything in the universe, then the beings that we are dealing with, whatever they are, have the ability for all the answers. So all the answers are in the field, and it's the ability to dissociate from your rational, analytical little voice that's causing the noise, shut it, quiet the brain through meditation, through hypnosis, through a head injury, through whatever it's going to take, psychedelics. Shut the noise down, pop into the field, grab whatever you're doing, whatever your field is, bring it back into the world, and everybody says, "Oh, that guy was so smart. Albert Einstein was a genius." Albert Einstein tells the story. I had a dream, and he talks about going with a toboggan at the speed of light, and he said, "I knew I had to understand that dream." In fact, you could say, and I would say, that my entire career was based upon a meditation on that dream. It was a dream. It was not Albert Einstein was a super smart guy. He was able to tap into the field, and you get these what I call downloads. Now I know they're more accurately known as noetic experiences. They come with absolute certainty. You know this is right. When I had the experience with Colin Anders in 2012, and I had a very long one in 2017, I knew when the material was coming in my head, I knew this was real. Get a piece of paper and start writing. This is the real material. And it comes with this absolute certainty. It comes with knowledge. It's not like a good idea. You get all these inventions, like with the Inspired. You take the one with the hologram or the one with the laser. Both of them, they went through all the processes. They did all their work and all the stuff, and they couldn't figure it out. And they both went and sat on park benches, and boom, it came into their head. And they go running back to the lab, and they knew they had the answer. It just sort of pops into your head. And that's what you do, is you do all the work, you go through all the analysis, and then you shut the brain down. Go for a walk, sit on a park bench, go to sleep, whatever. Quiet the left brain, the rational analytical brain. Once you shut the noise off, you pick up the signal, and whether it's music or art or whatever, that's what's happening.
Can you share exactly what happened in 2012 and the 2017 download?
Okay, so what happened in 2012 was I have 70 different contact modalities. So you got head injury, you got meditation, you got hypnosis, all these ways to quiet the brain down. And what I had was daydreaming. So Colin Andrews, who's a very prominent guy, and he had made this very controversial thing that 20% of all experiences or crop circles were real and the other 80% were hoaxed. So when I saw him lecture, this is in 2012, I mean, he was in the doghouse with the UFO community. Like, people were ready to stone this guy because he was saying 80% are hoax and stuff. He got the money from Lawrence Rockefeller to do the research. But what he determined was that the 80% that were hoax were also being done by the aliens, that they were telling the hoaxers what kind of circles to put down. So I went to the lecture. It was at UFO Congress in Arizona, and I'm doing the thing there. And there's lectures all day long. You don't go to every lecture. And so there was Colin Andrews crop circles. I'm going, I'm not into crop circles. I really don't care. But I knew he was a prominent researcher, so I said, okay, I'll go watch it. So I went in the room, but I didn't want to be there. I sort of zoned out, and that's the thing. The left brain quietened down. I'm zoning out. I'm sitting there thinking about, should I go across the river? Should I go for coffee? Should I go for dinner? I don't want to be here. And all of a sudden, it was just instantaneous. It was like he was talking about consciousness, and suddenly these three ideas came into my head instantaneously. One was the top secret government memo from Canada. So these are things that are not new things. It wasn't like they gave me something I hadn't heard before. It was stuff that I'd worked on, and my wheels were spinning. I wasn't getting anywhere. I was doing the government documents. I was trying to find out what the president knew, what Pandolfi from the CIA knew, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, presidential UFO. That's your site.
That was
still.
The thing.
Yeah.
And so suddenly it said the top secret memo that I talked about, because I studied the Canadian government. I've got all the files from Wilbur Smith, from his personal files. I'm the only one that has his personal files, 10,000 pages or whatever. And in the top secret memo, the only real top secret UFO document, he says, we were told by American officials, flying saucers exist. It's the most highly classified subject in the United States. Small group headed by Dr. Vannevar Bush. It's of tremendous significance to the Americans. And I had quoted this numerous times. The very next line of the document came into my head, which I never quoted. And it said, we were also told by American officials that other things might be associated with the flying saucers, such as mental phenomena. And the Americans aren't doing very well because they said, if we're working on it, they're willing to exchange credentials and talk to us. This is 1950. This is before anybody's ever talked to an alien. The first alien correspondence deal was with Adamski in 52, after they detonated the hydrogen bomb, a couple days after they detonated the bomb. That's when he first got to contact, would stop the bombs and the stuff. In 1950, nobody was talking to aliens. So how did the Americans know to tell the Canadians that mental phenomena was involved? All we were seeing was things flying around. So that popped into my head. And then at exactly the same time, Jan Harzen, his statement,
yeah.
He's talking to Ben Rich, and he says to Ben, I had this sighting when I was 9 years old. I was fascinated. I want to know, how does it work? How do they get here? And Ben Rich turns around and he says, let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And Jan goes, it means everything in time and space is connected. And he goes, that's how it works. And it was the same thing. It was this mental phenomena, the ESP thing. And then we were chasing Dr. Eric Walker. I'd written 2 books on him. He was former president of Penn State University. We knew that he knew what was going on. There was a crash briefing that had taken place at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1950. And he had been there. And he said, so what? I was there. Leave it alone. There's nothing you can do. You're up against the windmills. Unless you got the mind of Einstein, you're not going to understand it. I had a bunch of researchers who I was sort of directing them towards him. And everybody's trying to get him to talk. And I just sat back and recorded what everybody was getting from him. And at one point, he's doing an interview, and the guy's asking about the MJ-12. Is it just 12 guys? Is it Americans? And all this kind of stuff. And then Walker says, look, let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And I never knew until 2012 what the hell he was talking about. Because he said, it didn't make any sense. He said, what do you know about ESP? And the guy said, I don't know. He said, look, unless you understand about ESP and how it works, you will not be taken in by the control group. Very few people understand how it works. And that was the whole thing. So these 3 things say it's ESP, it's non-local consciousness. And I go, oh, that's how it works. And it was suddenly like I just gave up on the documents, and I zipped off on this whole consciousness thing. And then in the one I had is about 2017, I think. I remember exactly where it happened. I remember what street it was on, exactly where on the street, what time of the day it was. I don't remember what exactly year it was. Late in the fall, it was very cold. I'm walking down the street, and that's how I get my ideas. I'll walk for like 6 miles. I'll go for a long walk. And after about 3 miles, your mind shuts down. You stop thinking about stupid things, and your mind quietens down. And I remember I always go for coffee. So I'm at McDonald's. I walk 2 miles, have coffee at McDonald's, and I'm heading downtown, and I'm walking down the street, and all of a sudden it starts to come, and I go, oh, it's coming. Get a piece of paper, get a pen. And I have to take my glove off. I got this piece of paper and I'm writing down. And what I was getting then was 24 items. And these are, I'm eventually will write about it. But the ideas were, it was basically saying to me, not in direct words, but sort of images coming very fast. I'm trying to write this down. And then it stops for a couple seconds. And then I start walking again. And then it starts to come again. And I take the glove off and start writing again. So what it basically said is the world made out of little nuts and bolts? If it is, that's one world. But if the world is made out of consciousness and not nuts and bolts, then that's a completely different world. And all the rules are different. Is the world random? If the world is random, then that's one world. But if the world is pattern, that's a completely different world. Is it one life? If it's one life, then that's one world. But if it's reincarnation's a fact, if it's multiple lives, everything changes. And then the big one was the number one message that experiencers get from the beings is the oneness message. So it basically said to me, is everything separate? Are we separate individual things, sort of things floating around in time and space, bumping into each other? Or is it all one thing? If everything's separate, that's one world. But if everything is connected, if everything is one, that's a completely different world. So these 24 things came. Is it this? Is it this? You're making this mistake. You're making that mistake. And I got these things, and it's verified everything that's happened since then, that what I was told was right. And I'm just sort of filling in the gaps. I hear people talking about it. And those are my experiences. And it's the same thing. So when I had the download experience, that's how I discovered the music thing. Was I put download, and Paul McCartney with Yesterday came. Paul McCartney had Yesterday. He had No Values, where he has a dream, and he wakes up and these dreams, when you get a music song in a dream, it's like your dreams are all weird and you can't see people's faces and stuff. When you get a music dream, it comes absolutely clear. You just have to write it down. There's no weirdness about it. So he has this thing. He's playing with the Rolling Stones, and he's playing this song called No Values. And he wakes up and he goes, man, that was a pretty good song the Rolling Stones played. And he goes, no, I was not the Rolling Stones. And then he quickly writes this thing down. And he said he never told Mick Jagger because he figured Mick Jagger would want royalties. So that's the thing, is I started to realize that this was happening in music, that people are getting these downloads. And then I started to realize with the contact modalities that it happens all over the place in any sort of major field that you get, creative field. You start looking at how did they actually get this stuff? Where did they get that art project? How did this stuff work? Or, people who are doing mediumship or tarot card readings, you can talk to them and eventually they'll say, I really don't need the cards. I really don't need this. I can do it. I can. And it's the old idea. For some reason, they're able to get into the field. Now, and that's the thing, is the modalities. So what are the different modalities that we can use to get in the field? And I've got over 70 modalities that you can go through in order to get in the field. And I believe we can hack the field. And there's even guys who do this. There's a guy by the name of Martini who does this, where he'll get into the field, whether he's talking to mostly dead spirits and stuff. But what he'll say to them is, okay, I want give me a design for how to purify water. So he goes to the next person, and he talks to like 20 people, to spirits or whoever he's talking to, or aliens or whatever, and says, how would you purify water? And he puts them all together and he comes up with these inventions of how to purify water. Or I'll give you the last example. If you look at American Cosmic, have you interviewed Diane Pasulka?
Not yet, no.
Okay. So Diane Pasulka talks about this Tyler D. Now, I know who Tyler D is. I met him. I remember him. He sold his company for huge money. He got this idea. He told me, he says, Grant, I'll tell you what. The morning that idea came in my head that made this company that he ended up selling, he said, the last thing I remember the night before was a hooded figure standing at the end of the bed. And I said, really? I said, could you see its face? And he said, no, I couldn't see its face. I said, you go to LA all the time. He works with kids in operating rooms or something like this. And I said, you should go to Yvonne Smith. You should get regressed. And we actually had it sort of set up that he was going to get Yvonne Smith to regress him to see what this being had told him. He's got 40 different patents. He's a NASA engineer, lead NASA engineer. And he got this thing to put on a space shuttle. It worked. He's got 40 inventions. And what he says, his modality is, I go to bed, I sleep for 8 hours. I get up for an hour, then I go back to bed for an hour. Then I get up, then I drink this huge glass of water. I sit in the sun and drink this huge glass of water, and the beings start to talk to me. He starts to have this interaction with the beings. The same as Gary Nolan. Gary Nolan from TTSA.
Ah, yeah.
He's an experiencer. Most people don't realize a lot of these guys are experiencers. So Gary Nolan says, I don't know how it works. like in terms of downloads, this contact modality thing. He says, I don't know how it works, where there's little elves in your head or whatever, but I know how to make it work. And this is the whole idea. You can make it work. You can learn how to do this. So he says, I go through all the things, all the questions and all the stuff, and I take it and I put it beside the bed. This is my question. And he says, I wake up in the morning and the idea is in my head. We can do it. We can hack into the field and get this kind of stuff. Musicians are just the indicators that you can do it. And all musicians are right brain creative people. They can't read and write music. They don't really care what anybody thinks. They're almost like experiencers, almost like Roger Lear. They're all right brain creative people. All implants are on the left side of the body. And as Roger Lear says, there's piles of them here in Hollywood because it's all creative people. And that's the common link that you got to look at is experiencers are they're different people in terms of their ability to dissociate.
Now, let me ask you this. Whitley Strieber talked about an implant on one side of his ear. It might have been on, you said the left side or the right side? Yeah, that's very interesting.
Left side, because left side is run by the left side of your body is run by the right brain, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to a person, you and I are talking, it's our left brains that are talking. Our right brains can't talk. The female brain can't talk, but the female brain is the sort of the oneness thing. And they've done a lot of this research. I talk about it in a lot of lectures, where when they have people who have epilepsy, so they cut the corpus callosum between the two brains to stop the signals from going back and forth and creating these epileptic seizures. And you realize there's two different brains. They're completely different personalities. They do different things. And that's when I started picking up on the fact that it's this right brain thing that, especially the thing with musicians, it's unbelievable how many musicians cannot read and write music. Like Paul McCartney says, I've never done a scale, nor do I intend to ever do a scale, because that would ruin my creativity. They just sit there and they wait. Like Chris Martin says, all the bad songs come from me. All the good songs come at 2:00 in the morning. You just got to be up to get them. And so when he talked about Viva la Vida, he was asked by how do you get it? He said, well, I got the title in Mexico, and he said I tried to put 9 different songs in, and none of them would fit, or 8 different songs. And he said, well, how does it work? He says, I had to sit there and wait for it to come. And he said, then it came. I knew it was a song, and it came at 3:45 in the morning. And he said, then he got the song, and then he says, I'm going to go to bed. And then they said, no, you got to write it down. And they would not let him go to bed until he'd written the song down. And you hear that with experiencers all the time. That was the thing with Jim Peniston at Rendlesham Forest. He had the binary code came to him, and they would not let him go to bed. They would not let him sleep until he wrote the ones and the zeros down. It's the same story. It's just a different modality. It's a different characters, but it's always the same story. It's this dissociating from your rational, analytical little voice that's causing the noise, popping into the field, getting it in. And so you're interacting, and I believe in the field is going to be everything. So it's going to be aliens, it's going to be dead people, it's going to be multidimensional people. They're in the field, almost like Bashar, the great channeler, says, we come to you in your dreams because now you're in our world. That's how it works. They're in that field. We just think that there is no field. We think it's just nuts and bolts. And when you realize it's consciousness and it's this field, and you can pop into the field, so they can come into the world, become physical, go back into that world of non-physical stuff. And we think, no, you can't do it. So these aliens aren't coming in here. This is not true. They can come in, they can go back. We just think that we're stuck in this physical world, and that's all there is, which is totally inaccurate. And that's what they're sort of showing us. It's almost like I have this guy from Israel. His name is Joseph Ronan. He talks about when the beings came to him, and he had this oneness message. He's writing a book called Oneness. He gave him the whole thing. He can actually go back to the event and revisit the event and get more material and download it again. When the beings left his room, he said they all gathered in a circle, and they made this circle, and they held hands, and they started to rotate around in a circle and went faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And he says next thing they were turned into light, and the light got smaller and smaller until it was a little ball of light, and then it just went boop and disappeared. So the question is the phenomena we're dealing with, Dr. J, is it a physical phenomena, or is it a ball of light? And if it's a ball of light, does it eat bacon, eggs, toast, and coffee in the morning? We are dealing with a phenomena that can be a ball of light can become sort of a consciousness phenomena, can come into the physical world, become physical, go back into the field. We just think that there's only physical world, and that's what they're trying to tell us. No, it's more complex than that. They're giving us little hints, the same as they're doing it through mediums, through physical mediums, through all sorts of different methods. They're trying to get us the idea, almost like I have a theory called, a lecture called The Theory of Wow, where I talk about why do UFOs have lights on them? They have lights on them so you can see them. They're just sending you a message. Wake up, something's going on. Why are all cattle mutilations bloodless? Because if they weren't bloodless, nobody would pay any attention. Why did they take a cow, a heart out of a cow, 9x11 heart out of a cow with no incision? Do they need that for the program of building these hybrids? No, they want you to go, how the heck did they get that heart out of the cow? Why do they make these elaborate crop circles? They want you to go, wow, what is going on here? And they're just making you go, wow, and the more they make you go, wow, the more you investigate. And when you discover it for yourself, you suddenly get it. And it's not like someone told you, you figure it out. There's more to the world than this physical thing. And that's what that's what the aliens are trying to show us. The spirits are trying to show us. All these modalities where people are tapped in that world. We're learning there's much more than this physical world.
There was a question for here a while back. This is Ronin Soul 9. Why is some music so negative these days? And for me, to you, is it because they know something we don't about something bad?
Well, that gets into the whole. It's you're manifesting. Like I'll give you the example. I don't know how much time you're going to want to go for this, but I say if you look at the Skinwalker Ranch thing, they had everything there except for UFOs. It was all apport material, which I'm working very heavily on, apport manifestation material. So you take a look at the Skinwalker Ranch, and they're saying, oh, it's got the hitchhiker thing, and these guys went home, and their wine bottles are flying across the room, and the people have to move out, and it's this dark place, whatever. I said, you go, and I have a book coming out like pretty shortly, within the next couple of days on, I was at Mount Shasta again. And I had big events happen for the second time I was there. And you go to Mount Shasta and you do the thing with the Punians and the Mission Rama and all kinds of stuff. I defy anybody to take a C5 or a Mission Rama thing and show me any sort of evil alien thing. That is, you got to realize you're manifesting what you're seeing. So I said at the Skinwalker Ranch, when these guys had this event where they said, stop, you are not welcome here, go home. And these guys went home and this stuff was flying around the room. I tried to get people, I said, were these guys armed? And nobody would answer the question. I found out later, yeah, they were armed to the hilt. They were special forces guys. What you manifest is you got to realize this idea of separation. Is it one thing or is it separate? We say, oh, it's separate. So I'm upset because Hillary's emails and my dog ate the homework and my mother-in-law got me upset. And it's this idea of separation where you realize like you are part of what's happening to you. You are manifesting, almost like the dual slit experiment, where when you look at it, it becomes a wave. When you're not looking at it, it's a particle. This kind of thing where you got to realize you're part of the equation. So when it comes to the evil alien thing, I'm going to eventually write a book about this. The idea that there are evil people or evil aliens, this is a Christian idea where you look at somebody and say, okay, he's a good guy, bad guy. He's either going to heaven or hell, because that's all the only options you got in a Christian modality is a person's a good person or a bad person. And no, there are no good people and there are no bad people. There are no good races. There are no bad races. There's just a bunch of people floating around in a reincarnation situation where everybody does good and bad. As Jesus said, let he who is perfect cast the first stone. Judge not that you be not judged. It's this whole idea that we're just people who are manifesting good things and bad things by our thoughts. And so if you have a negative thing, you're going to produce negative music. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're going to hell or anything. It's just that's the thing that you are spending your time on. And so you got to realize that whatever happens to you and I, you got to say, why did I get this? Why did I create this? Because it's the idea that I got in the second download. Is it one life or is it multiple lives? If it's multiple lives, don't worry about anything. You know, if you think there's evil Arabs or whatever, guess what? You're coming back as one the next time around. I mean, the world will balance itself out. The universe balances. Everybody gets to be the refugee. Everybody gets to be the rich guy. It's this idea that we're learning stuff, and there's no bad people going to hell. It's like I always say, there's nobody bad enough to go to hell, nobody good enough to go to heaven. Everybody's just floating around in the middle of trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And we all do good and bad things. And we got to realize that whatever we do, if you look at the Dr. Michael Newton research, everybody only gets asked one question according to 35,000 regressions that they did. When you die, you go in front of this panel between 3 and 12 people, and they say one question: how did it work out? And everybody gives a 5-word answer back: I could have done better. Because it's basically, you set up the play, you put in the players. Don't blame Trump. Don't blame the government. Don't blame your mother-in-law. You're going to put time out. This is about you. You cannot bring up other people. You set up the play. You said you're going into the world to put lyrics into songs, to be a radio broadcaster and get the message out, whatever. And everybody says the same thing. Oh, I forgot to do this. I should have done that. And that's what it's all about. It's everybody's in this learning stage, and the world will balance everything out. There's no really good or bad. The world is neutral. We are the ones that make it positive and negative.
Now, the one thing I've heard is that we have this incredible ability to manifest anything we want, like what you're saying. And we could make this a better world, and we could probably do things that are supernatural that defy the laws of physics, right?
Exactly. Comes down to belief. It comes down to belief and the fact that you can do it. So you get people who are doing these kind of things. You'll see they have this belief to do it. And I say, like in physical world, so you can build a house in the physical world, but you can also build a house in the spiritual world. And the prime example of that is an experiment that was done in Toronto in the 1970s called the Philip experiment. Have you ever heard of this one? This is where they do this seance thing. So they set up this experiment where they set up Philip. Philip is a guy from the 16th century, and they have him. He has his life history. He's running around on his wife. And she finds out, and then he figures, oh, the only way I can save myself is to call her a witch, and then she gets burned at the stake for being a witch, and then he gets all depressed and commits suicide. So they make up this character, and then they sit there for a year and try to meditate, and they're trying to produce this ghost, and nothing happens. And then someone says, well, why don't you do the seance thing? Why don't you sing songs and be boisterous and stuff like that? And they do, and suddenly, boom. Here's this ghost appears. Philip appears, and he's able to respond to their questions, and they sing songs. And when the person whose favorite song is not there, Philip doesn't know the song. He only knows the songs of the people who are in the room. And so they produce this ghost. So you can do it. So if you're doing negative stuff, like you commit suicide, you will leave a trace in the spiritual world that somebody else might pick up as a ghost. Like, this is a haunted house. It's got, neat, evil things, but it's we who are making that stuff in the physical, in the spiritual world. We're building good things, bad things. We're leaving bad traces, good traces. And it's our thoughts. As Edgar Cayce, the great psychic, said, thoughts are things. We don't think thoughts are things. They are things, and we can build these things. And it seems to me, I think, and I'm not 100% sure, but it appears that sort of energy only lasts for a couple of hundred years, because if you look at ghost stories, there are no ghosts over 200 years. If you go back and you see all the ghost stories, you're talking about people who are in the last 100 years or 150 years. It's almost like it fades away, that people have gone into another lifetime or whatever, or that fades out of the spiritual world. But we can create in the spiritual world a very negative place. And that's where I say with Skinwalker Ranch, I show some clips of a farm around Skinwalker Ranch where all this stuff starts to appear on the video cameras. And the whole thing is, if you take a look at what the Skinwalker Ranch thing, you had these two tribes who were throwing curses on each other for 200 years. And you say, well, curses don't mean anything. What if curses do mean things? What if you can actually create this very negative environment by tribes cursing each other for 200 years, and you create this environment in this area, and we say, oh, it's a separation thing. Oh, it's the area that's doing it. It's the area. It's not us. And we got to realize we are part of whatever is happening around us.
I'm really glad you brought up the Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, this is a big topic that even Whitley Strieber talked about yesterday, and it talked about some type of wolf, a 300-pound wolf that was shot at, yet it still didn't react to the shots being fired from the guns.
Yeah. So it's like this partly physical, partly spiritual thing, almost like there's an experiment. I've been working big on the skull experiment. If you're familiar with the skull experiments in England in the 1990s, where they're doing this physical mediumship thing, and they talk about they bring in these three guys from the Psychic Association, very skeptical guys in, and they do this thing with the crystal, where they've got this crystal in a bowl. And these three scientists are told, pick up this crystal. It's lit up. It lights itself up. And they say, take the crystal out of a bowl and hold it. And they're all around this table. They pick up the crystal. They put it back down. And they say, okay, now pick up the crystal again. And all three guys try to pick up the crystal. And their fingers would just go through the crystal. And they were going, what's going on? And they say, okay. And then they said, okay, now pick up the crystal again. And they make the crystal again is solid. And that's what they say. You have everything has a spiritual component to it and a physical component. And they take the physical component out of it. That's why your finger could go right through it. And it was the whole idea is that we are in this world where when they come into this world, they can become physical, but they don't have they may not be the same rules in terms of they're partly physical or partly spiritual, so they can go back into the field. Almost like the thing with the whole thing where people talk about the Sasquatch. Well, the Sasquatch is it's an animal that's hiding or whatever. And I'm going, absolutely not. I had a case in 1976, and I live, if you know where I live, there's like one tree per mile. We have a joke. You can let your dog go and watch him run away for days. I mean, it's absolutely flat. There is no hills. There are no trees. It is just flat wheat land. And there was a Sasquatch in one of these areas with a couple of trees around this bush, along this small creek area where this thing was seen looking in a window and stuff like that. And they showed me where this thing had tracked and had gone into this clearing, and the footprints went into the clearing in the snow, and that's where they stopped. And that, to me, it was quite clear that this is not the physical phenomenon you think it is. It can actually sort of disappear. It can come into this world. Whereas people, we have this sort of, our left brain keeps telling us, no, it's a physical world. I can see it's flat. I can see the sun goes around the earth. Everything's solid. And we make all these false assumptions. And when you start getting more information, which we are doing in studying UFOs and paranormal phenomena, we start to realize, oh no, we got this wrong. We got that wrong. And it's not the physical world you think it is. It's this very bizarre sort of world where these beings are coming into our world. And the Skinwalker Ranch just represents this. But the Skinwalker Ranch, as I pointed out, as Jacques Vallée said, the only thing we didn't have at Skinwalker Ranch was UFOs. So everybody ties it into UFOs, and it's not UFOs. It's this bizarre theory of wow stuff. It's like making stuff disappear. The woman comes home with a bunch of groceries as soon as they buy the place. And I was told that before they sold, the Shermans bought the ranch, the brother of the guy who owned the ranch before said there was nothing paranormal going on at that ranch. As soon as the Shermans got it, so then you say, are the Shermans part of what's going on there? She comes home with a bunch of groceries, puts the groceries on the counter, puts all the groceries away, goes to the next room, comes back again, and the groceries are all back in the bag again. Or she goes into the room or takes a shower, comes out of the shower, and her brush and her towel are gone, and she finds the brush in the freezer. I've got another one where the brush was in the freezer. They put it in a really weird place where you're going to go like, I didn't accidentally put it in the freezer. They're trying to make you go, what is going on here? They're just making people think and realize that it's not the world that you think it is. And so I'm doing this whole thing with reports and manifestations of, if you look at the Paranormal Rangers, they talk about an investigation they did. 64 coins in one weekend in this one building they were in, all dropped, and they couldn't film it. They all would drop on the floor, all heads up. And that's a message. There's no doubt that all this is messaging. It's basically trying to get our attention to tell us this is a weird world, try to figure this out. And people like me and other people are going down that road. And the more we investigate these weird phenomena, these apport and manifestation phenomena, then we realize that there's something really weird going on, and it's not the world we think it is. And we start to learn the rules of what's actually going on. And so I would say that my work right now is into the whole idea of what's the nature of reality. And that's where it gets to this whole idea where you take a look at Bob Bigelow. Everything's Bob Bigelow is the big UFO guy, whatever. When Bob Bigelow, if you read Jacques Vallée's latest book number 4, you see that Jacques Vallée talks about the starting of NIDS in 1995. And Bigelow stands up and he says, we're going to investigate UFOs and survival at death. And then the one guy says, what? We're going to do that. All these scientists are saying, why are we going to do that? Why do we just do Sasquatches and ESP? He's really upset. Like, what are we going to do this stupid stuff for? And he said this, and basically we're going to UFOs because you can measure some of this stuff and you can watch it, and survival of death, because that answers all the questions. If you can answer that question, what happens at death, you answer all the questions, because it tells you the nature of reality. And people don't realize that Bob Bigelow put in $3.7 million into the University of Las Vegas, Nevada, into consciousness studies, because his son died at 21 or 22 years old. And that kid's son died at 20 years old. So he's fascinated with death. He's fascinated in this whole thing. And to him, it's got really nothing to do with UFOs. It's got to do with consciousness. And when I saw he'd put up $3.7 million for consciousness studies, I knew he understood what it was about. It's about consciousness. It's not about aliens. It's not about nuts and bolts. It's not about free energy. It is beings who are trying to get a message to us. They're trying to wake us up. They're trying to get us to go, wow, and realize that it's not the world you think it is. It's a completely different world. And the more we wake up, the more we have a chance to survive. As long as we have the rape, pillage, kill, and steal, it's all material. Whoever's got the most toys when they die wins. We are going to destroy the world, and they know we're going to do it. We have to realize we're all one. We are all connected. Whatever we do affects Gaia, affects the universe. That's the message. 54% of all experiencers are given the message about oneness and love, which is the same message that people get in deep meditation. It's the same message that people do psychedelics get. It's this same thing. It's people tapping into that field and realizing we are all one. Everything is alive, and the basis of the universe is love. That is the ultimate end of this whole story. I'll guarantee it.
You know, Bigelow, there was a recent document that came out, and I'm going to ask you about that. Have you heard about this document about S4, possibly a special projects EGG? He tried to get access to it, or some naval officer tried to get there, and he was denied by Bigelow?
I haven't heard that. I was involved with the documents that were the Wilson document and the alien autopsy document. I was heavily involved in that. Those were documents that were done for Bigelow for NIDS. Those were studies. They did a bunch of studies on different things. And so I'm familiar with that. And also I'm doing Stanton Friedman's files. So I was looking at Stanton Friedman's files, and I photographed 6,000 pages of his files. And I'm going back in June again to do another, maybe 10,000 pages next time. And I know from that Bigelow had, because Stan was big into Area 51. He didn't believe that there was anything to the story. And so there's this really interesting correspondence between George Knapp and Stan Friedman. It's like 100 and some odd pages, like 6-page letters, where it's all this inside. Knapp is telling him what's going on the inside, why he believes all this kind of stuff. And so Stan had all the files. He actually has the files from the court proceedings against Lazar for the pandering charge. And he also has all the corporation papers for when Bigelow set up the corporation with Bob Lazar on the 115. All the papers are there, all the corporation papers for that operation. So I've seen that kind of stuff. But the question with the leaked documents is it's where it's coming from. And in the end, it really doesn't really matter whether they have it or not. I mean, it's almost like if you discovered tomorrow that the government actually knew, so what happens the day after? Everybody goes back to work. It doesn't change anything.
That's true.
It really doesn't affect your life, because people are sort of living through, and it's a separation idea. Well, if the government were disclosed, then everything would be good. We'd have a good life. We'd all make money or whatever. And that's not true at all. Because I think in the end, this is one of the things I've changed in the last couple of years. I actually now believe the government really doesn't have anything. And I'll give you a couple of examples how I know that. You get the one thing was the top 3 guys that have been around to have the top secret SCI clearances for 50 years, like Hal Puthoff, Kit Green, and then Jacques Vallée, who doesn't have a security clearance, but was with them, do the core story in 1987. What do we know for sure? There's all these weird stories going on. What do we know for sure? And they came up with this thing called the core story. We are being visited by some sort of intelligence. We have crashed. There's been at least one crash, and we're not doing very well. And if you look at what Eric Davis said, Eric Davis is saying the material is not at Area 51. And he's been very open about this. And he said that they shut the program down in 1989, that they could not get anywhere. They could not back engineer. It's almost like your cell phone. You have to use your fingerprint to open the cell phone. Same thing. You can, and there's a story that they have at Crete Air Force Base. They've got a down craft at Crete Air Force Base. They can't even turn it on. That makes sense because everybody that I've talked to, I've got 50 people, 14% of all experiencers say they've flown the craft. And everybody will say exactly the same thing. I'll say, how do you fly a craft? They'll say you do it with your mind.
It's your mind, right? Yeah.
You need your mind to turn the craft on. You can have all the crafts you want, but until you have a consciousness that turns the craft on, you're not doing anything with it. And they'll tell you that's how you fly the craft. You become one with the craft. This oneness message. You become one with the craft. Whatever you think is what the craft does. It's all this mental thing. And so you have this whole thing with and the latest one was, if you take Jack Sarfati and Eric Davis. So they're having this argument. And I remember I was talking to Dolan about it. And Dolan says, well, who do you think is right? And basically, Sarfati says he knows how to float this piece of metal that Linda Howe sold for $35,000 to Tom DeLong.
Yes, that's right.
And so he says, I know how to do this, and Hell doesn't know how to do it or whatever. And Eric Davis writes this letter. This is one of these email things that's going around. So Eric Davis writes him a letter. He says, Jack, you're connecting dots that don't exist, and you're destroying physics. And is basically saying, you haven't got the foggiest notion what you're talking about here. And then, of course, Jack Sarfati writes back and says, well, you don't know what you're talking about. So these two guys are arguing about this layered piece of metal, about how to float this piece of metal. And so me and Dolan says, I think Sarfati's right. And I go, I don't really care who's right. The fact that these two high-level physicists are arguing about how to float a little piece of metal indicates they ain't got squat. They have no idea what's going on. And it's like, we got all these crafts, we're flying them around to other planets and stuff, but we can't float this little piece of metal. It indicates that exactly what Eric Davis said. They shut the program down in 1989 because they were getting nowhere. They could not do anything. And according to the rumor, I haven't heard George Knapp say this, but apparently George had said this, that every 5 to 6 years or 7 years, they take the technology off the shelf and they take a look at it again and then put it back on and say, no, we still can't figure it out. It's so far advanced. So what may actually be true is what happened when Trump was briefed. So Trump gets the Navy, goes in there and briefs them and says, here's these Nimitz and the Go Fast and the gimbal video.
Yeah,
and they show them these videos.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they got. Yes, it's the core story from 1987. Yes, there are UFOs. Yes, we are being interacted. But in terms of, all we know is that it's unidentified. And so that's what they tell Trump. They say, we really don't know what it is, but it's unidentified. It's not Russian. It's not Chinese, whatever. And Trump goes, yeah, I don't know if I believe. I don't think I believe. And he did that before when he was asked about Hillary before he got elected. He said the same thing. I'm really not interested in it. Trump would have said something if we had the technology. And it's almost like maybe that's disclosure. They did disclose. Yes, we have videos. Yes, there are UFOs. The government is working on it. That's it. Maybe the disclosure has actually taken place, and that the idea is that we have, aliens working with us, and we've got crafts, and even the idea that one person had the thing where we've been trading with other star systems since 1972, and I go, trading what? If you look at the beings, you look at them, there's nothing physical about them at all. There are no leather furniture on the craft. There is no jewelry. People say they're here to steal our gold. They don't wear jewelry. They don't have anything that's physical. They don't seem to sleep. They don't seem to eat. There's nothing physical about them at all. So what are we trading for? They don't need anything we got. They can take whatever they want. They don't need to trade with us. This is crazy stuff. Or this idea that we're making an agreement with the Greys in 1953 when the Greys didn't appear till 1962. There's nobody talking about Greys in the 50s. And we made an agreement with the Greys to allow them to abduct people, and they're going to give us technology. And I go, so you sign a treaty with the Greys? So what happens if they violate the treaty? What are you going to do? Take them to court? I mean, this is crazy stuff. And they can do whatever they want. They're running the show. And that's what Jim Semivan said. When Jim Semivan was asked by John Alexander, apparently, John says, well, who's running the show here? And he said, they are. The beings are running the show. They are in charge. They are running the whole thing. We are just sitting there and observing. And that's why they're so interested in people like Chris Bledsoe. That's why they're interested in experiences. That's why they may have helicopters around them. Because if you want to know what the UFO phenomenon is about, you've got to talk to the experiencers, the people who are interacting with the intelligence. It doesn't matter what the government knows.
So glad you said that. I've been saying that for years, and I know you've heard me say that too. How can we know what they smell like, what they look like, how they communicate, unless we talk to the people who interact with them?
The intelligence people were, so that's why I say it doesn't really matter whether you find out the government knows it. That doesn't get you anywhere. Or the metals. Now there's this big thing on the metals. And I say the metals is a ports. They're dropping this stuff to make you go, wow. There's no way that a flying saucer flies across the galaxy and then little pieces start to fall off the flying saucer. There's no way. There's piles of this stuff. Even I've got 3 different pieces that people have provided me. There's a piles of this stuff. And so what if we do this thing? People, there's like people connected to these different things. They found out I knew about a couple of pieces out of Canada. So I was asked for the files. So, okay, I provide the files. So what? So you discovered that this piece that Linda Howe sold is anomalous. Maybe it's got, bad isotopes or whatever. So what? It's anomalous. It's unusual. Yeah, it's like the Nimitz video. Yeah, it's probably not ours. Where does that get you? It gets you nowhere. It just says to you, yeah, there's probably something weird going on here, but it doesn't prove anything. It's not until you, and the reason they don't listen to experiencers, people will say, well, it's just anecdotal. And Dr. J and Grant, they just believe they were on a craft or whatever. And I go, yeah, it's all anecdotal. Yeah, it's all belief. You believe you're a skeptic. You believe you saw a UFO. You believe it's a kite. You believe it's a balloon. Everybody, it's all belief. Yeah, but you cannot go anywhere until you talk to the people who are the closest. And that's why when I talk about Chris Bledsoe, that's why the NASA, 2 people from NASA was watching him, why a U.S. Air Force general came to him and asked him how to fly the craft, how he flew the craft. He told me how he flew the craft, and they went to him. That's what you got to do. That's why Jim Semivan went to him, because Jim Semivan had the beings in his room, and Jim Semivan knows you got to deal with these people. And he went to Chris Bledsoe and he said, I've got to, I had the experience the same as you. I want to know. And you start exchanging stories. And when you start look at experiencers, that's when you get these patterns. 50% of all experiencers say they can heal people. 50% say they have been healed. 42% say they got mathematical, scientific, or technical material in their head. 40% say they knew the answer of everything in the universe. 70% say they've seen ghosts. 14% say they've flown flying saucers. And you get these patterns, and this very distinct patterns that show they're all telling the same story. And we can learn something from this. And that's what the government is stuck in. There's even an expression that I heard that the CIA had used, because we cannot interact with the phenomena, we watch the people who the phenomena interacts with. That makes total sense. So I remember Betty Andreasen, her husband, was very upset about, their tracking and they're monitoring their phone and whatever. And I said, did they ever give Betty plans for how to fly the flying saucer? And he, well, yeah. And he starts talking about it. And I said, well, are you surprised that the government would be watching you? I mean, if they gave your wife the plans on how to fly the flying saucer, and that's the whole MILAB thing. When you get into Melinda Leslie, the whole MILAB thing, where they re-abduct people and they take them and they say, what did they tell you? Why are they here? That's what they're doing. They're trying to figure it out as well. And you can't blame the government for trying to figure out. But they're going through the experiences. They know that's the way you go. And I say, absolutely, you are never going to solve anything until you talk to the experiences. The rest of it, videos, you can watch all the videos you want. You can watch all the photographs. You can look at all the metal you want. You can even have a craft. That still does not tell you anything. It's not until you interact with the intelligence behind the phenomena that you are ever going to solve the UFO problem. And you have to understand its consciousness. Consciousness is the direct link that links you in. And that's almost like Tom DeLonge. Tom DeLonge goes, and I had these 3 that came into my head in 2012. Tom DeLonge has the experience where he goes into the skiff, the skiff with the head of Lockheed Skunk Works. So he's in the skiff, right. And he's right. And before Robert Weiss, the president, walks in, he's talking to the head scientist, and he's talking to this other guy, and they're bugging him about his conspiracy website, which I think is part of the reason they took him, because he was putting all this conspiracy stuff out. And they said, "What's the conspiracy stuff you're putting out?" And he's trying to justify why he's putting out these crazy National Enquirer stories or whatever. And then the guy says, "Okay, I just want to know this head scientist for Lockheed says, I just want to know, how do they work? How does it get here? Like, what's the propulsion system?" And he says, "Well, this, that." And he says, "Well, it's pretty good. Anything else?" And then Tom DeLonge says, I think consciousness is involved. And then the head scientist says, now you're talking. This is according to Tom DeLonge. Now you're talking. And he said, for 45 minutes, that's all the head scientist wanted to talk about. He wanted to talk about consciousness. They know the consciousness connection. Now, it doesn't mean that they can make it work. So it's when somebody's saying it's nuts and bolts, S4, all this kind of stuff, they've missed the boat. Until someone's talking about consciousness, they have missed the boat of what's actually going on. It's not nuts and bolts. There may be nuts and crafts or whatever, but everybody that's been in the crafts and has interacted with them will say it's alive. It's a live craft, and that it actually changes shape. So people say, we got this technology. Chris Bledsoe told me this. You look in the craft and it's like 40 feet across. And then you look outside and it's like 10 feet across. And you look in and it's like 40 feet across. And you look out, it's 10 feet across. It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Anybody who says we got the technology, I think you got to stop smoking those funny cigarettes. I mean, there's no way we have this technology. The technology, when you talk to experiencers about what is happening, you realize this is so far beyond anything that we have. It's unbelievable. And it's this consciousness connection. And I always say it's going to be a lot less physical than people think it is. It's going to be a lot more spiritual than people think it is. And it is not going to have any sort of indication of capitalism at all. It's completely gone. Those are the main three things that people are going to be really shocked. And a lot of people aren't going to really like what's behind the UFO phenomena. It's not what you think. It's not like these aliens are coming here and they're going to give us free energy and we're going to, make millions of dollars and we're all going to be rich and have, cars. We don't have to pay for gas and stuff like that. It's not that. It's something completely different. If the aliens wanted that, they would have dropped off the technology a long time ago. If they wanted us to know what was going on, they want us to figure it out. So they're doing these weird little things where they're doing these things that don't make any sense, crop circles, apports, manifestations, all this weird stuff. And they're trying to get us to think. And the experiencers are the people who are actually interacting. And experiencers are different than the government. You talk to the government's not going to tell you anything, but you go to an experiencer, because you're in the Zero group in Los Angeles. You can go to any of those people and say, tell me about your experience. And they're just happy to tell you what happened. They're not hiding anything. And when you start putting the stories, you start seeing very direct patterns as to what is going on.
That's how I investigate, actually. I look for patterns, and I've found so many consistent patterns, just like you found, that makes it so far that it's 110% true. They're not lying. They're good people. They're not psychotic. They're not anything what skeptics say. They're not what Michael Shermer says. And I don't know how Michael Shermer and his cohorts and people like that can make fun of people who are experiencers.
Well, I'm actually going to. I write about it in the contact modality book, where I talk about. There's a part of neurology that people really don't want to talk about, and I say skepticism is what's called. It's called the confabulator, or it's called in neurology they call it the interpreter. It's in the left brain. It's the same thing. It's in the left brain, and what it is, they did experiments with the people who had this corpus callosum cut that separated the two brains. And then what they would do is send a signal to one brain and then send a signal to the other brain, the right brain, left brain. So the two brains couldn't communicate. So what they would do, and I'll give you an example. So they'd put a Coke on the table, and then they would send a message through the left eye to the right brain, which is the female brain, sort of the non-local brain. And they would say, pick up the Coke and drink it. So the left hand, run by the right brain, the left hand would pick up the Coke and drink it. So then they say to the guy, they say, okay, why'd you pick up the Coke? So the female brain can't talk. It picked up the Coke with its left hand and it drank the Coke. But it can't say, I picked up the Coke because you told me to pick up the Coke. So when you talk to the person, you're talking now to left brain. The voice and the language is in the left brain. So the left brain has no idea why its left hand picked up the Coke. And this experiment was done. This is the Nobel Prize winning lab did this research. And basically what it came down to is that the left brain immediately would make up an excuse. And what they called it was to make the thing make sense again. So what it is the brain is confused. It's like, what is going on? It's like there's a wall and suddenly there's a big hole in the wall. And what the interpreter, and it's actually like a BSer, or a confabulator, what it does is it fills the hole in immediately. And that's its job, is to make things consistent. So you have a consistent story. So if you have a consistent story that believes the world is material, there's nothing to it, and someone says, Dr. J comes up and says, "Oh, I saw a UFO and it went and I went through the wall." Immediately, there's a hole in the wall of that consistent story. It's like, oh my goodness. And so the confabulator immediately fills the hole in and says, "Oh, you just imagined it." And what they discovered is every time it instantaneously would fill it in, and it would make something up, and it would never ever be right. It would just put it up. So when the Coke would pick it up, they'd say, "Why'd you pick up the Coke?" "Well, I was thirsty." That was not why. It was because they were told to pick up the Coke. But he just makes up a story. And that's where, and I believe that's where skepticism comes from. This part of the left brain that is to make things consistent. And what they found is when it makes up a story, it will never back out of the story. They will say, "Oh no, this, that," and it will just dig itself into a hole and will never back out. And nobody talks about it because it's a very damaging thing for neurology to realize there's this thing called, and they call it the interpreter, because the left, this little thing that makes up, rather than being called a BSer or a confabulator, it wants to be known as an interpreter because it makes it sound like it's actually doing something positive. But it is in the left brain, and it does actually work that way. It's been proven. They've got all these tests that show that instantaneously, when something weird comes up in your life, that thing will make an excuse. And once it makes an excuse, and that's where skepticism. So if you take a look at Stanton Friedman says, "Skeptics, don't bother me with the evidence. My mind is already made up." What you realize with skeptics is they never read anything. The confabulator doesn't have to read anything. It's already within seconds of hearing the story that you saw a UFO or you were on a ship or whatever, has made an excuse to fill that hole in the wall, and it's not going to back. It doesn't have to read anything, and all it's going to do now is defend the story. And that's so you see all the ones, Menzel, Oberg, Klaas, Shermer, all these guys, they never read anything. They were just, they believed they were good arguers. We need this left brain analysis. I'm very smart and I'm going to argue with you. And the left brain wants to argue. The female brain doesn't. It's into oneness. The left brain is into separation. The left brain is into let's go to war. The female brain is in let's have a family, let's be one. And so that left brain is running it. So how many female skeptics do you know in the UFO community? There are none. There are none.
Yeah,
it's a male thing. It's left brain. It's male. You have almost, and actually, when I discovered this, I started looking, and there are actually articles written on the fact there are almost no female skeptics. Now, there are female scientists who will say we're skeptical because we have to be skeptical. That's part of science. But it's the left brain interpreter that made up that rule. It said, okay, we're going to have this rule that in order to do science, you have to be skeptical. That's the left brain interpreter put that rule in there to protect itself. And you don't. It's like I played chess. I don't know what games you play, but I play chess.
Absolutely.
You do not need to be skeptical when you're playing chess. This is just a game of figure it out. You sit down at the board, Dr. J makes his move, and I sit there and I look at it, and then I try to figure out, why did Jay make that move? And until I know why you made that move, I won't make a move, because I'm trying to figure out, he's up to something. What's he going to do? What's his next move? What's his third move after that? And you're sitting there trying to figure out. You don't have to be skeptical. You don't have to believe that Dr. J is an evil alien or anything like that. You just got to figure it out. It's about investigation. It's about look at the facts. You don't have to be gullible. You don't have to be skeptical. You just look at the facts. If you see a broken glass in the middle of the kitchen floor and there's milk all over the place, you don't have to say, I'm going to be skeptical. You just go, what went on? And you start asking questions and you build a hypothesis, and then you do observations, and then you do an analysis, then you do a conclusion, and that leads you to your next hypothesis, and then you make some more observations, and you run that cycle over and over, and you get closer and closer to the answer all the time. You don't have to be skeptical. Skeptical is this left brain confabulator, interpreter, that has this role, and they've tested this. If you go back and just look up under YouTube, go to YouTube and look up left brain interpreter, this kind of stuff. There's some amazing videos of the tests that they did in labs that showed the fact that this thing is there and that's its job, and it just throws us off. It keeps you in the physical world because it's never, as soon as someone says there's something that's not physical, their world is a physical world. I'll give you an example. There was Nobel Prize winner Feynman. Feynman won the Nobel Prize in 1960 for physics. He was a notorious atheist and rational, analytical, left brain guy. His wife dies when he's very young, and she dies, and you've heard the story about the clock stopping. So
yes,
10 after 9, the clock stopped. when she died. So what's a left brain guy who's got an interpreter going to do? Is he going to say, "Oh, my wife left me a message"? No, the interpreter is going to say, it's got broken. So his whole life he always maintained that the nurse had knocked the clock off as the wife was dying, and that's why the clock had stopped at 10 after 9. That's this interpreter. It picks it up and then it doesn't back out of it, because that's the physical world. It's like his physical world is coming apart. It's the idea that there's more to the world in this physical world, and suddenly he sees the clock and he says, no, that can't be happening, and he eliminates it and makes an excuse that the nurse knocked the clock off and would never change it. Or Michael Shermer. Michael Shermer marries that German woman, and then you heard the story about where the radio starts playing. He's trying to fix this radio that her grandfather had given her, this little transistor radio, and he couldn't get it to work, and they just threw it in a drawer. And then the day they're getting married, this radio starts to play, and it plays the entire day. It plays these love songs all day long, and then stop playing. Well, Shermer could associate. He said, well, he walked his way out of that because he's in the physical world. Nothing's going to change the physical world. His left brain interpreter is going to come up with all sorts of excuses as to why that radio played that day. You're not going to accept anything. And as long as we allow the left brain, the noise in the brain, to run our life, we are never going to figure this thing out. And that's why it's so important to go to experiencers who are in that right brain world and listen to aliens who are putting implants on the left side of the body, influencing the right brain. And it appears like if you take a look at Jill Bolte Taylor, who is a neuroanatomist who has this left brain hemorrhage, she talks about there's no fear and there's no stress when your left brain is shut down, and there's no voice in the head. If you take a look at aliens and the way they act, there's no fear, there's no stress. It's almost like they're totally right brain. They're almost like that left brain is completely shut down. And that's why I believe that they're using the implants. Whatever the implants are doing, they're affecting the right brain. They don't care about your rational, analytical left brain. That's where the noise is. And they pop you out of that field and into it. And so experiences are very important because they're able to get into that world, the right brain world. The left brain, rational, analytical thing, that has gotten us nowhere. We've done that thing with UFO sightings and that sort of stuff, where we've done this since 1947, and it's like the old expression, how many times do you have to run the thing over and over again, the definition of insanity, before you realize that nothing's going to change. We keep running the experiment thinking something's going to change. We go through this process instead of going to the experiencers and finding out that maybe these beings are in a world where they have all the answers. That idea where all the answers are in the field, you can pull them out. So if these people are able to go into the field to talk to those beings, whether it be spirits, whether it be aliens, whatever you're talking in this other field, and bring that material, that's the accurate material. And that's where the download stuff comes from, is the downloads are the most accurate material. That's why I've done this whole thing, that when I got my download, it comes with absolute certainty, and they always turn out to be true. Whereas the left brain interpreter, left brain stuff, always turns out to be wrong.
You know why I love speaking with you? Not only you're such a great friend, you have so much great knowledge. I knew you when you were only focusing on presidents, and then after you started working with experiencers, and your brain literally grew so much with all the information you gained from your downloads and what you heard from them. Is just so amazing. And let me say this to you also. Do you know how many people have asked to hear from you? Enormous amount. So I'm so glad I was able to get you on. Now, let me
just make one little point on that, because it's kind of interesting, where I talk about, because I'm noted for talking very, very fast. And I say, you talk about, like, people say channelers. Don't talk to me about channelers. They're just full of it, man. They're just, and I say, where do you think your words are coming from? Do you actually think that when I talk very fast, that there's actually neurons in my head that are having little board meetings and saying, okay, let's put this word in. Okay, now let's put this word in. And they have someone checking the grammar and someone working my hands and somewhere where it's channeling. When you're talking, it's channeling. So when I'm talking to you, I'm going, I don't know what I'm going to say in 10 seconds, but I know something's going to pop into my head in 10 seconds. It's all channeling. It's just a different level of channeling that we're coming in. Where does memories get stored? How does the brain get the memory? How do you forget stuff? It's in a field. We're just pulling it out of the field. And that's basically what I'm doing, is I'm sitting there and the story will come in the head. Tell this story. And these stories are popping in. This is not random neurons running around, bumping into each other, randomly pulling stuff out. Just the fact that we talk is proving that the stuff is in a field and we're pulling it out of a field.
I definitely agree with that. And again, like I said, that's why I always love talking to you. Every time we've been doing an event together, every time we've hung out, every time we've been to Zero, every time I've been around you, it's just a knowledge, so much knowledge. And even today, I learned even much, much more. And let me say this to you. Hang by for a second when I get off here to properly thank you. But if you have a final statement for everybody, what would it be? And also plug in where people can find you.
Okay. The basic thing is this basic thing that you don't have to really worry about anything outside yourself. If reincarnation is a fact, you and I, Dr. J, came into the world to do something. We will leave. We will be asked the question, how did it work out? All we have to do is figure out, why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing? And are we doing it? That's all we have to worry about. As to where I'm going to be or to get a hold of me, I put most of my music stuff, and I have a lot of new stuff that I'm doing that we haven't talked about tonight. I put it on my Facebook page, which is Presidential UFO. All my YouTube stuff, my lectures, I'm doing a lot of lectures on Stanton Friedman, all the stuff I'm finding in the Stanton Friedman files. That's at White House UFO YouTube channel. And I wanted to plug, I'm doing a music lecture. I've always had problems doing music lecture because of the copyright thing. I'm doing a music lecture for Portal to Ascension next August, where I'm going to do a full music lecture of all the songs, all the download stuff, where you'll actually hear little clips from the song so you know what song I'm talking about. And it'll be a major presentation. It'll be like 4 hours long, and it'll go through all the music stuff, which is absolutely fascinating to me. I've never been into music, but when you hear some of these really weird stories of where music comes from. So I'm doing that next August for Portal to Ascension. But Facebook and YouTube is where most of my stuff, and I put a lot of stuff up. If you follow my Presidential UFO Facebook or my White House UFO YouTube channel, you'll see I post an awful lot of stuff. I've got actually 7 books. They're in final stage of editing. There's a lot of material about to come out.
Yeah, that is. And with that being said, I don't think of it. There's a better place to stop. So everyone, you know where to find me, and officially we're gonna sign off.